All right, another podcast from the Michigan Institute of Athletics in Brighton, Michigan. It's going to be a stellar podcast today. Me and the guests were speaking a little bit before we started recording, and I'm already pumped. I'm not going to tell you why, but you're going to find out in the podcast. So right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties transitioning from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you'd like to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So without further ado, I want to introduce Roger Craig. Roger, right before the podcast, me and you were like going off, and I'm going, wait a second, we need to save this audio for the podcast, but we have a lot of similarities in our background. We have similarities in our age. You know, you train jiu-jitsu here at the academy. But for the listeners that don't know you, I want to take this all the way back. I want to go like, what was Roger like as a kid? Did you grow up here in Michigan? And let's just start to build your story.
Yeah, we will let the cat out of the bag. And since we already started, we'll get there. I was born in South Korea, so I'm half Korean. I was a military brat. My dad was stationed in Korea. Met my mother, and boom, I was born. I was born in Busan. Eventually, we came to the United States and settled in Michigan. I was about 5 years old when I got here. From there, I grew up in Michigan. I had just unbelievable parents. I'm very, very fortunate. My dad's my best friend. My mom's a saint and the disciplinarian. But since I was from Korea, I started Taekwondo in Korea. And when we got to the United States, my mom always wanted, she always wanted something that related to her home country, something that was cultural. And so I kept doing the Taekwondo, and I did that my entire life. I started questioning Taekwondo as we transitioned into what we talked about when I saw pro wrestling. So I grew up, went to school, did Taekwondo, and went to pro wrestling, and and got into pro wrestling. And that's when I became a giant fan. And I went to elementary school. A lot of my personality and swagger was of Bret Hart. Unfortunately, it was a lot of Shawn Michaels, which got me kicked out of class. And my parents were asking, like, why are you acting like this?
Because this is how cool people act, okay? I'm not sure if you know, but this is how the best do it.
I'm like, Dad, I don't know if you see that guy with a mullet and underwear out in front of thousands of people, but he's the Intercontinental Champion, and I'm going to use my Taekwondo and the stuff that I learned in wrestling to get there. So that carried with me for a while. So
I already like what I hear about what you said. You had a strong family unit at home. You had wonderful parents. So do you feel your parents were pretty strict in setting standards for you and the man that you were going to be in your home life? Because, and I don't want to shift forward here, but I feel like in our current society, we are lacking a lot of family structure. We're lacking a lot of discipline. We're lacking a lot of like, hey, we might be strict on you. Because I remember when we were growing up, strict parents were everywhere.
Yeah.
There was everywhere across society, kids couldn't do things because they had strict parents. And now you have very, very laid-back families, and 100%. I think we see some of the results of it. So did you grow up in a strict family, and did they ever talk about Korea? Like, did they ever talk about what it was like over there versus what it's like here in America?
Yeah, so the word of my family is accountability, right? So, like, everything you do, you're going to be held accountable for. And my parents had standards, and so with Taekwondo was part of the disciplinary pillars that I had growing up with. My dad being in the military, my mom, just Korean people in general are pretty disciplined. So I was always held accountable. I always had to explain myself. And the basis was Taekwondo. So like no matter what, there was times in my life as I was growing up, I wanted to quit. Because like who wants to go and kick pads and wear a hot gi on a Saturday and get your butt kicked? My dad would make me go every Saturday. I would go Mondays, Tuesdays, whenever I had any free time. That was a foundation of my life. And I remember telling my dad one day, 6th grade, I was like, Dad, listen, I don't want to do this anymore. And my dad's like, oh, that's nice. Well, we're going to go. So get your stuff ready. You don't really have an option. And that was huge. And I remember as I was growing up, the friends that I ran with also watched WWEF.
Yes, I was going to say it was Worldwide Wrestling Federation.
And so a lot of our personalities derive from that, right? And so we had kind of an attitude and chips on our shoulders, putting each other in sharpshooters. So we caused a lot of problems. So when my friends would come over to my house or when I would go over to my friend's house, there wasn't open conversations between the parents. They said, hey, if my kid acts up, you can beat him. You can beat them. They think they're pro wrestlers. They break anything. They mouth off. You are the extension of me. And so that was all true when we did the Royal Rumble on a trampoline, and I threw one of my best friends off a trampoline and broke his collarbone. So it was true. I got beat. I shouldn't have did that, right?
And I remember back then, these things weren't controversial. Like,
No.
Even to talk about this now, this wasn't controversial at all. If you stepped out of line, you got your ass whooped.
Oh, you have
Like,
to.
That is exactly what took place. And then that's almost what made you set boundaries of like, wow, when I cross this line, here is the repercussions.
Absolutely. Good luck giving my mom a bad look, because so my dad's like they're the complete opposite. My dad's 6'5", just a blonde. Look, he looks like a Viking. My mom is 4'9", and she looks absolutely like just ridiculous standing next to him. But they're such great, they get along so well. And my mom has never dropped her accent, so it's super fiery. Like Korean people are just fiery. And so I remember when I broke my friend's collarbone, it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like, basically the parent of the child's collarbone that I broke, God bless her, called my dad and says, Paul, Roger broke Ryan's collarbone. Can you come get him? And my dad shows up, and I got punished with the mom, and then my dad punished me on the way home. And you know what? I said I made a good decision for the rest of my life, saying trampolines are not the Royal Rumble. Never made that mistake again. Discipline works, right? So as I got into middle school, the pro wrestling thing ridiculously was a huge part of my life. And it got me into like wrestling, like amateur wrestling.
Oh, you actually started wrestling in school because of pro wrestling?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I'm here to report that's not the same thing.
There's a little difference.
It's a little difference. I remember when I tried to grab somebody's wrist and move them, they didn't move, and I was like, "What's going on?"
I've seen this work
I was like,
since my childhood.
I was like,
Something is broken.
I was like, I think I got too much clothes on.
I'm just not good enough yet.
Yeah, I was like, I need underwear. I don't have long enough hair.
Base paint.
I was like, why isn't anybody letting me put them in a sharpshoot? I was like, this is something I'm doing. So eventually, what was nice is my parents never let me quit anything. So I thought I was going in, and I thought I was going to be a tag team champion. Perhaps Shawn Michaels and I were going to do a ladder match. Well, no, I'm in a singlet, and I'm getting pinned in front of all my peers and classmates. And I remember looking at my dad, and I said, Dad, I want to quit. And my mom and dad says, we agree you look ridiculous in a singlet. And my dad's like, you're absolutely terrible, but you're not quitting. And I was like, bummer. So
What is your mother's name, by the way?
Sukyoung.
Sukyoung
Yeah.
and Paul. Shout out to
Shout
Sukyoung
out
and
to
Paul. Seriously, we need more of this. That's that's awesome. I'm loving this story already.
Oh yeah,
Just like you're gonna have follow through. You're
Yeah.
gonna do what you said you were going to do. You're gonna build character.
Yep,
Man.
100%. Like there's nothing more people say that they were raised on intimidation and fear. Yeah, that was a part of my raising, but not for a split second did I not feel loved. Not for a split second did I not know that my parents were my best friends. But like fast forwarding, it helps me in my professional life where like people have given me criticism, hard criticism, especially in the military. And I didn't take that so personal and was like, oh, this guy hates me. I said, okay, I got to fix it. And that person doesn't necessarily dislike me. He's giving me criticism, and I can move on and get better from it. And I mean, still to this day, like my worst critic, besides myself, is my mom. She'll straight up call me. She's like, Rajo, you look a fat. And I'm like, that's cool. It took a while for my wife to get used to with the blunt honesty, but they're just such wonderful, quality human beings. And so I started wrestling. Terrible, terrible, terrible. What was nice is I was such a terrible kid. I was such a knucklehead that my dad actually enjoyed watching me just get fireman carried all over the place, getting pinned and looking ridiculous in a singlet. And so I played football and ran track as well. And
By the way, where'd you go to school? Where'd you grow up?
Greenville High School.
Oh, okay.
So Greenville has kind of a bad rap right now. There's a lot of crime and there's a lot of like a drug use, but there were phenomenal teachers. Like when I tell you I'm super fortunate, the adults that surrounded me in my life have been wonderful, right? So my dad's best friend was in the Marine Corps, Randy. He instilled this crazy discipline in me, and he also treated me like my parents. If I stepped on my crank, he would adjust me right then and there. And he showed me how to properly deal with confrontation, because when you have somebody else yelling in your face, you got to know how to handle it. And so shout out to Randy and Tanya. But yeah, I went to Greenville High School, and I'm talking like just phenomenal human beings. Like for instance, there was a teacher found out that a high schooler got pregnant, and stuff like that happens. And her parents were very religious, and they weren't happy with it. This teacher bought her diapers, wet wipes, clothing for the kids. It's just that type of people. So,
stuff that you almost don't see a lot of anymore as well. Like people that, man, they're just going to go out of their way for other human beings because they care about one another versus like, wow, that's not the right, that's not my place.
Yeah.
We did grow up in a little bit of a different world.
We did.
You know what I mean? And I'm very thankful for it.
Yeah.
I'm very thankful of the time that we got to come up. And it was a little bit before the technological revolution that has completely changed the way we interact with the world,
Yeah.
Like now, I feel like people are so disconnected because everything's virtual, everything's online. Back in the day, like you knew people, you knew your teacher, they knew you deeper. They knew Roger the little pro wrestling wannabe.
Well, there's also accountability too. So like in the same sense, so like I didn't know pro wrestling was going to be such a big theme, but I've never really talked about my past like this, right? So like pro wrestling. My friends and I adopted a lot of the personalities, and that kind of got us into fighting, right? And I knew I was a terrible wrestler, but me and my friends wanted to learn how to box. Well, my hometown didn't have any boxing gyms or like this place is so fortunate to have a gym like this, by the way. But anyways, so we're like, hey, like let's get some Hulk gloves or boxing gloves and let's fight each other in the bathroom.
Did you say some Hulk gloves?
Yeah. So there were some different ones.
No, I remember you put the hands in.
Because that's how it started, because we got our little brother stuff, and it's like, hey, we want to learn how to box, so when's the best time to do it? It's like, we'll just do it before school. They're like, where? In the bathroom. And so we started dotting each other's faces, and we'd show up to class, and our teacher's like, why are you sweaty? And we're like, what do you mean?
I was just trying to get here quick.
It's just like,
I ran from home.
I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
What are you talking about? Just pouring sweat. I'm not sweating. You're sweating.
And then you look over at Jacob over there, and he's like... because he bounced his head off a dryer. And so like they called our parents and they're like, what is going on? And my dad's like, Roger, do not lie to me. And I'm like, I don't want to tell you. And he's like, what are you doing? I was like, me and my friends box in the bathroom before school. And he's like, that's cool. But he's like, stop. So anyways, as I grew up, I continued playing football. I continued wrestling. I continued running track. I was just terrible at wrestling, but wrestling is a character builder as well. You know what I mean? And I didn't come from a wrestling family. And I got a little better, but the lessons I learned in overall life through having somebody on top of you and that grind and like the thing that you get the most out of wrestling, and I think I see it at your gym too. The thing you get through the most is the practices, right? It's the practices. The practices are difficult. There's times where you don't want to show up. There's times when you walk in and it is a Roman bathhouse in here, but you're here and you get through it and you can win the day. And so that's what wrestling taught me. It showed me hard work. And but meanwhile,
and you just said it really well. I mean, the secret is in the struggle.
Yeah.
So like maybe it's wrestling for one person, maybe it's whatever it is. It's when you have to struggle and you force yourself to struggle. And let's say there's like an easy path that doesn't have struggle, and you're like, yo, I can just go this way. I can just quit. Like you said, Dad, I can just quit this, and I don't have to try to jump these hurdles every single day.
Yep.
What you don't realize until much later is like those hurdles are so crucial to being the person that you want to become and becoming a person that's going to be successful in this lifetime in all of your endeavors.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like you have to take that rocky path. You can't take the smooth cruise to the ocean,
Nope.
Or you can, but you're going to regret it later, or you're going to be a fraction of the person that you could have been in terms of perseverance and inner strength and yada yada.
So like as humans, as human beings, they take the path of least resistance. And that's what they do. They take the path of least resistance. And why do you got so many unhappy people? Because they take the path of least
resistance.
Exactly. So
by the way, it's mind-blowing to me how many parallels there are between my story and your story. Like, my cousin Shane is going to listen to this.
Yeah.
And we were the tag team champs of the world. I mean, we had the little wrestling. There was little stuffed dummies that you had that we used to body slam and slammer. When you said the Hulk gloves, I literally took my little brother's, because he got it as a gift.
Yeah.
I was too old for it. I took my little brother's Hulk gloves, and me and my friends beat the shit out of
you
each other
have
with
to.
them. I mean, as you're telling the story, and like, who is your favorite wrestler, by the way? You had to have one.
I don't want you to judge me, and I don't want anyone else to judge me.
He's afraid to say it on camera.
Shawn Michaels,
Okay.
because like I wanted to be a ladies' man, but I was a thick Asian kid, the heartbreak
man.
kid,
the sweet chin music.
Can I say something without you judging me?
No, 100%.
When he, so my parents were not wealthy by any means, very hard collar, blue collar. I begged my parents to get the pay-per-view because it's expensive, and he was doing the 1 hour Iron Man match, with Bret Hart. When he rolled down in that cable and he was, you remember saying when the top of the arena?
I remember. He was on the cable and he literally came down into the arena.
So it was an event for my dad and I, because my dad, anybody that knows my dad, he hates pro wrestling, but it was a bond that he had with it. That's just the type of man he is. So I'm sitting there watching it. My dad's sitting next to me, and my dad hears like this, and he's like, "Roger, are you okay?" I have tears going down my eyes.
It was a powerful moment.
It
You're
was
literally
just
crying.
deep. I was
He's
like,
coming to the arena.
yeah.
You're like, this is amazing.
And just in my head, I'm like, that's going to be me one day. That's going to be me. I was like, after I fist fight all my friends in the bathroom, I am making it right there. I'm going. So, but yeah, who's yours?
That's awesome. For me, it was Razor Ramon. It was Razor Ramon, man. There was one, I remember that it was a pay-per-view, so similar. My parents would not order me the pay-per-views. My dad thought it was stupid.
Yeah.
My dad would not get me. I went to my Aunt Diane's house and I was like, please. Like there was a whatever the event was where he had to climb up the steel ladder in the middle and like take the belt
ladder
that was,
match.
hanging from the middle, and he had almost lost and back forth and then won it. I was like the same moment. My world was like shooken up. You know what I mean? I was like, oh my God, it's amazing. Same exact thing. And I had to basically I couldn't persuade my father. He was like, nope. So I had to go to my aunt and be like, Aunt Di, listen, this is a powerful moment. Like, I need to see this. You know what I mean? And it's nuts. When I look back, people need things in their lives that hit you that hard.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, you need to find something that lights that, like, spark in your soul or fires you up that makes you want to, like, take this life in. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't imagine a life, if you pull those type of passionate things out, life can be a very dull existence. Life can be a very monotonous routine. I get up, I do the exact same thing, I figure out what to eat, I go to sleep, I get up. Whereas, like, you need things, no matter what other people think. Because when I look back, man, I treasure those moments now because they're crucial to shaping who you are.
Yes.
And, like, man, that feeling in your soul is irreplaceable.
Yeah.
You know, and I found that the first time I competed in jiu-jitsu, or actually when I found jiu-jitsu, and then when I stepped up into the cage the first time, you know what I mean? And, like, not to get off topic from your story, but, like, when I was little, it was pro wrestling, and then Pokemon and DBZ were huge for me. So it was almost like, how could I grow up to be something that, you know, was like, let's talk about the stuff from DBZ. Like, you're always trying to level up. You're trying to increase your power level. Like, Pokemon, I always joke around with my fighters. I'm like, you all became my Pokemon. Like, I'm the trainer that travels around. Think about it. I'm traveling around the world. I'm like, Josh Parisian, I choose you. You know what I mean? They go out, they battle the other person. I have to try to make sure that their technique is there. And, you know, like.
You travel to different places to display. I
flat out basically said, like, as close as I could get to be, if you looked at all my childhood loves, like, pro wrestling, Pokemon, DBZ, maybe like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh my God.
I'm pretty much living the expression of this in a real form.
Oh my God.
But you need things like that. You need those powerful things because they shape you. They make you come out of your shell. They make you develop personality.
Yes.
Etc.
It teaches you passion at an early age, at a harmless age. It teaches you passion, and that's actually the embers that are building in you for when you do find your direction in life. You can light it. And that's the fire that's going to carry you through.
And you remember that feeling. You know what I mean? You had that feeling, like you said, that those embers, that deep in your gut, like your spark, your purpose, whatever it is. And no matter how many ridiculous it may be initially, what it is the feeling.
Yes.
And then if you can learn to chase that feeling and you can learn to live in that feeling and go like, wow, there's something here. Yeah. That's like being a human being that's like fired up.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and then you're willing to take on challenge. You're willing to overcome things. You're willing to be the guy that almost got pinned or the Undertaker that was dead and then he came back to life to win the match. You know what I mean? And like these things are important.
Because in life it's gonna throw you curveballs. You're gonna have things and you're gonna scratch your head and you're gonna look up and say why. And then for a second, a lot of people will sit there with their hands up and talk about how unfair everything has been to them. Or they're going to realize, hey, I'm like the Undertaker. I'm rising from the dead. I'm going again. And then you can apply that in other life. And then in jiu-jitsu, I got tapped. I can reset and do it again.
I absolutely cannot stand the word fair. And I'll tell you why.
Oh, my God.
First of all, nothing in life is actually fair.
Nope.
Like, if we lived in a utopia, this idealistic concept where, like, every human being was the exact same, we had the same physical gifts, mental gifts, everything, maybe fair could exist. And the universe, you were just born with the exact same plot of land. Okay, then we might be able to throw the word fair around.
Yep.
Fair does not exist in this world.
Nope.
Fair doesn't exist in the animal kingdom. Fair doesn't exist with human beings, because if I'm willing to do 10 times the type of character development and work and progress, I'm going to achieve more than if in a parallel universe there was another James Gray that blamed everyone else for my problems, that sat around, that complained about everything, that refused to take on the task, that always took the easy road, that never went for a dream. Why should that person have the same as me?
Yeah.
So, like, and I think that cripples people. I actually watch young kids, young adults. They're like, well, this is just not fair. I got put into this circumstance. Listen, I've got a lot of sad shit in my story.
Oh, yeah.
And I could have been the guy that goes, well, your mother didn't commit suicide when she was young and this and this and this, so you don't understand. These things happen to me.
Yeah.
But instead I went, okay, these are the cards that I'm dealt.
Yep.
I have potential.
Yep.
I'm going to create something. So, like, I hate the word fair, man. I hate hearing it. Like, don't even tell me what's not fair. Tell me what you're going to do about it. Don't even tell me about your problems. Let's talk about solutions.
Yep.
If you want to complain to me, I'll listen to you for about 20 seconds. But if we're not trying to problem solve, you're wasting my time. Okay? Because I don't complain to you.
So that's a theme I've had I was an infantry lieutenant in the military, and now I'm a squad sergeant.
I want to talk about how you get in the military first, because that's a question I wanted to go to. So from the pro wrestling, you get into wrestling. Yep. What were you like in high school? What did you think your job was going to be? And then I want to lead into the military. Like, what made you decide to go that direction?
So I was so when I got to high school, you transition from sweaty guys in tights slamming each other to realizing that's fake, which broke my first heartbreak was not my.
We need to talk about it.
If you want to talk about heartbreak, my heart wasn't first broken by a woman. My heart wasn't broken. It was broken when my dad sat me down and said, "Roger, this isn't real." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I mean, he's like, what they're doing is real, but he's like, this is like a movie. And I remember, because I was old enough to understand what soap opera was, because my Korean mother watched General Hospital, which is
Days of Our Lives, General Hospital.
Shame on you, Suk Young. You're lucky you're a good mom. But anyways, he's like, it's essentially a soap opera. And I'm like, no, it's not. And he's like, "Roger, I want you to really just come on." Thank God I was at it. He didn't let me know when I was 25, but I was young enough to rebound. So it was like as I was starting, like the end of 6th grade.
Listen, Santa didn't hit that hard, okay?
No.
You found out Santa wasn't real, and you're like, okay, I can take that. It's my parents that love me.
Yeah.
They're getting me gifts. But pro wrestling, you're like, Dad, take it back. Take it back. I need to sit down for a moment.
Yeah, I was like, my dad's lucky that he was such a good parent, because I would have started smoking cigarettes because it stressed me out. But anyways, so after that was done, it was a fun phase. I grew out of it. It was an important phase. I didn't realize it until I was talking to you. And so I get into high school, and I've primarily focused on football, wrestling. I ran track. Track is another one of those hard lessons where I played baseball my entire life. And one day I was working out at the gym, and the track coach was like, "Hey, you're pretty fast." He's like, "What are you doing during the spring?" Coach O'Brien, shout out. And I was like, "Hey, I'm going to play baseball." And he looks at me and says, "Everyone makes mistakes in life." I'm like, what is that supposed to mean?
I like this guy already.
He's just like, they're not a winning team. If you want to be used athletically, you can run track. And I'm like, he's like, the workouts might be hard for you anyways. And I'm like, whatever. So I go home. I'm like, "Dad, I'm going to run track." He's like, "I'm warning you right now. You run track, you're running track, fool." And I'm like, track can't be that hard. So I show up. "All right, everybody, do your mile warm-up." And I'm like, I don't like track. But now I was committed, and I was stuck. So, but that's another individual, teacher, coach, mentor. I mean, that man must have changed so many lives, because he's just a quality human being. He actually kicked me off the track team, right? And here's a person that hates running. He kicked me off the track team, and because I had an attitude, and I was one of the better runners, and he humbled me, and he called me, and he's like, "Listen, I kicked you off for this," and it was for a day. It was more of. Now I look back on it, it was like,
just go home. You're out of here.
Go home, yeah. And so he calls me, and he's like, "How do you feel?" And I'm like, I'm humiliated." And he's like, "Come on back, and I want you to apologize to everybody." And just that type of
Shout out to that
coach
coach.
Tim O'Brien, the man. But
actually, there's a huge bit of gold insight right here. If you're a young person, when that person comes down on you in life and says, "Get out of here, your attitude sucks,"
Yep.
Come back when you can apologize to everyone. There's two paths in front of you, okay? There's a path that says, hate that person, blame them. You were great at track. They should have never kicked you off. You don't deserve that. And then you go away from it and you give up and you don't go through that character building lesson. Or there's the person that humbles himself, goes back, apologizes to the people, does a little self-reflection, and then later on, like Roger just did, we'll be sitting down and go, "Man, I am damn glad I had that coach."
Yeah.
Take lessons from this.
So important. And so throughout high school, I really got into Taekwondo. I was fighting in tournaments all the time. I got my second-degree black belt when I was 16, but I was pressing all the time. And so when I would compete in tournaments, my parents would make me wake up and kick the heavy bag before school. So my coach would put out a heavy bag routine. I would kick the heavy bag. And I used to hate my parents for it. But then I would have to go to school, and I would go to practice. And then part of me getting my second-degree black belt was I had to teach Taekwondo. That is so hard. You know what I mean? Like, especially kids. And you know what I'm talking about.
100%. People that are still learning their body, still learning how to move. You're like, lift your left leg. You're like, that is your arm. That's not your leg.
Or like, lift your left leg, and then they turn around and they just sprint. And you're like,
what do I do?
It's like, can I pick your kid up?
100%.
So those were like, so what helped was I got to fight in tournaments, and I loved fighting. I loved it. And I was pretty decent. I won some tournaments. And that's kind of how I navigated through high school. And then as I was going into my senior year, my dad was still in the National Guard, and he gets deployed to Iraq. He gets activated, and this is 2005 to 2006. And I really fell in love with football as well. And so my dad, that's like a real strong bond my dad and I had. He loved watching me play football. And my dad went to Iraq my senior year of high school. So was
that really tough having your dad gone? Because it sounds like you had an extremely tight bond with your family, and now your father is over there. You know it's dangerous. You see about shit on the news.
Oh, yeah.
So that was probably a big character building thing because you're also the man of the house at that point.
Yep. I have a little brother that's 10 years younger than me, and it sucks that I got all the athletic gifts. I'm just kidding. But so
that's crazy because I have a little brother that's like 10 years, or no, he's like 8 years younger than me.
How would we not go against each other in the tag team championship in our previous?
I don't know. I don't know. Or the universe was just waiting to link us up, and like now we're like, okay, like, that world title is ours.
I'm like, James, grab your underwear. Yeah. Ready to go. What side note? That's another comment. My youngest son, his name is James. Crazy,
dude. The universe is wild.
I'm getting creeped out. So, anyways. So my dad goes to Iraq, and so my little brother who's 10 years younger than me. He takes it super hard, and my mom is a rock. So I remember all my best friends growing up. I had a crew of best friends, and I mean we basically lived at each other's houses. A lot of it's because our parents were sick of us. So it's like, hey, Jake, Marcus, and Eric, they're gonna stay the night here. I don't care if it's a school night. We got to get stuff done. And so my parents could trust their parents, and vice versa. And on the weekends, we'd all hang out. So I mean, we had a close bond. So like, it was a normal thing for me to come home from Taekwondo and my best friend or one of my best friends is eating dinner inside my house, or like they're taking a nap in my bed, and because like we lived close to the high school, and a lot of my friends lived out of town. Not a big deal for me to come home from somewhere, run the Myers, and my buddy's napping in my bed because he had basketball practice and then he has practice again later. And so, especially my dad, who is a dad to everybody. When he went to Iraq, all of us were there that sent him off, and I mean, all of us were wrecked. We were juniors in high school. My little brother was wrecked, and I remember we're all crying, and we're all crying in my kitchen, and my mom, comes in from outside after she says goodbye to my dad, and she's like, "Why are you crying? No big deal." And she just walks away. My mom is madly in love with my father. Like, I try to model my marriage and my family like my parents do. Like that's how strong of people they are. And so it's one of those things where, hey, this sucks. There's nothing you can do about it, but we're not going to sit here and look at each other and cry. We got to pick up and move. And that was that lesson, that thing that my mom said, and and all this plays back so much later in life too, because there's going to be incidences where things happen, and you're going to sit there and look at each other. We're going to pick up and move. We got to pick up and move. So my dad does the Iraq thing, and so everything was going good. I could only talk to him every once in a while, and all of a sudden we get a letter, and my dad's been wounded. He got blown up by an IED, and he is in bad shape. And I remember at that moment when that happened, I was really embarrassed. I had this sense of embarrassment that here I was, a kid, 16, 17, and my dad was fighting in a war, and I wasn't. And I know that's like, you know, it's impossible because of the age, but I remember being humiliated that my dad had to go fight a war and I didn't, and I'm the more able-bodied person. And I always kind of kept that in the back of my head. And I wasn't angry at it because, not that I understood war, but I understood stuff like that happened, but I was more humiliated. And it's that little warrior fire in you, right? Like the young men are supposed to fight the old men wars.
And a little bit of like, I can make a difference. Like,
Yeah.
that should be me.
100%.
I should be the one over there, not just my father. Like, he doesn't, like, it should be me out
Yeah.
there. 100%. I can understand that.
So my dad, he was hurt real bad, and so he finished his tour. He made himself of it. So they didn't really know how bad he was. He ended up breaking his neck, his arm, his back. He had pretty serious traumatic brain injury, but he basically made himself useful doing odd jobs there. So he comes home and they do X-rays and they're like, "Oh my God, you need neck surgery immediately." Thank God nothing happened. It's like you could be a vegetable or you'd be dead. So my dad had to get neck surgery, and basically seeing my Superman just be laid up and hurt and broken, that was really tough. And it just burned me. Like it gave me this weird fire. And I actually wanted to like compete further in Taekwondo after high school, and I wanted to see how far I could take it. And just in that moment, I'm like, no. I was like, I need to do something. So, but now I remember my dad, a Palm Pilot. When Palm Pilots were popular.
I remember.
Because his brain injury was so bad, he'd have to write stuff down. But now, but he couldn't even figure out how to use it because his memory was so bad. So, I mean, my dad's doing great now. I mean, he's taking care of himself. He can't do the same things that he used to do, but he's fine now.
So then you decided right after high school, I'm going in the military. Like, did you make the decision at that point, or did that come down the road?
Well, I'm a terrible friend, and I drag everybody along with me. You know what I mean? When you're
Or a great friend.
Or a great friend. When you're unsure about something, like you're like, "Hey, you should do this." They're like, "Why?" They're like, "I'm doing it. I'm not sure about it. I'd really like you guys to come." And so, and to be honest, me and my friends have never even discussed this, but I think they had the same impact, right? And now, because 9/11 happened when we were in middle school, right? And I don't remember.
You don't remember exactly where you were when 9/11? Because I do.
I was in Mr. Nichols' class in social studies, who was also a phenomenal human being. And I remember he looked at me, looked at all of us in class. He's like, "This will affect all of us." And
What grade were you in?
7th grade.
I was in 6th grade, so you must be older than me. You must be 34.
I'm 33. I think maybe 6th or 7th grade in that.
I was in Mrs. Romberger's class, 6th grade, and I remember it came on over the PA like, "America is under attack."
Yeah.
And I remember being like, "What? Yeah. Like, what do you mean America is under attack?" That's a wild moment that be burned in our brain forever.
Yeah, and like this is how much of an idiot I was. That Mr. Nichols, he was like our social studies history teacher. He looked at all of us. He's like, "This will affect all of you." And I remember just being like, "No, it won't.
No, it won't."
And then next thing you know, as I get in high school, all this is happening, and now I'm very aware of what's going on. And so I think my friends had the same thing too, where they had that same feeling of there's a global war on terror going on. So the big hiccup came when me and my friends finally decided to make that decision to do it. I talked to my parents, and mind you, like this was only a year removed from my dad coming home. My dad was still not himself fully, and I said, "Hey, I'm going to join the military." And it crushed my mom. Like,
yeah, I was going to say, I'm picturing mom right there going, "Look at what has happened to my husband from war, and now my son is going to go, and he could be in the exact same state or worse."
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, luckily, Paul survived.
Yep.
But That's got to be a definitely, even though she's an iron wall,
Yep.
that's my baby.
That's actually the first time that I've ever seen my mom have a kink in her armor. You know what I mean? She's just this iron lady, and that's the first time where I mean she had to leave the house and like drop. She probably cried, I don't know, but she left and let out all those emotions, and she threatened just to not. She just everything in the book to get me not to do it, and so we came with an agreement that it's like, hey, my dad's like, join the National Guard. He's like, at least it's a compromise, and you know. It's not that I do owe my parents everything, and I should listen to my father's advice. And so we all agreed. It's like, yeah, we'll just join the National Guard. So after I graduated high school, your open house. Luckily, everybody was nice enough to, you have your dinner party or, like the potluck and all that stuff, and people give you money for college. I just blew all that on golf and just partying before I went to basic training. So,
do you remember what you were going to be or what you thought you were going to be before you went military? Like, did you have a certain career profession, or was it just you were dialed?
Zero idea. Like, even before I realized, I was like, maybe I'll do something in the military. I actually had zero clue. I had zero foresight. I just was like, hey, I'm going to go get destroyed in wrestling, and then I'm going to enjoy football, and I'm going to get destroyed in track, and I'm going to hang out with my friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, you're living in the moment. You're living in a situation where it's like whatever comes, like I'm going to be ready for it. I'm a pro wrestler, man. Like I'm ready to go. The world can be thrown at me. I'm ready to go.
The world throws lemons. I put them in a sharpshooter.
If that is not an expression to run with, I don't know what is. No, 100%. So then you joined the National Guard.
Yep. And so I joined the National Guard, and I go to basic training in AIT, and I just was like, I had a lot of fun. Like I just have fun. Like I just have a really, really good time. And so now, me and my friends went in as like light wheeled vehicle mechanics. And I remember going to AIT, your advanced individual training, and I'm like, I was like, this is no fun. I was like, because like I'm sitting in a classroom, I'm learning. People that know me, I'm not an intellectual giant. You know what I mean? I like just getting weird and just getting my feet on the ground and just, I can't read manuals. I just understood the concept of lefty loosey, righty tighty. And I was like, I probably should not be working on America's equipment that people are going to depend on. So already, but you know what though? It was easy to have a terrible attitude, but full circle, I was like, I didn't like wrestling either. I didn't want to run track. I didn't want to do taekwondo. And so, you know what? I came in with a good attitude. I made the best of it. And, I didn't learn anything, but at least I was present, and at least I wasn't a hindrance to the people around me. Because, there was people that, their whole dream from rough neighborhoods, they got into the Army. This is what they wanted to do. They dreamt of being mechanics, and I didn't want to shit on that. You know what I mean? This is somebody else's dream, and I don't want to shit on it. So, it was fine. It was away from home. I was with my best friends, and we made the best of it. So I got home, and I'm just part of the National Guard. Well, my parents really wanted me to go to college, so I go to Central Michigan University, and I was really unhappy with my military MOS. And to be honest, I was really unhappy at college. Like I just was not. It wasn't for me. I went to Central Michigan, and so I ended up meeting a girl there, who now is my wife, and we have a third kid on the way.
What's her name?
DBNG. She's from Columbia.
Shout out to DBNG. Shout out.
She is absolutely the most beautiful person I've ever met. Like she is my best friend. And so I meet her, and I never really had a serious relationship. But when I met her, and I'm like, whoa. I was like,
wait a second, this is it.
But I didn't even know that was it. I was like, I'm gonna do everything in my power to sleep with her. And she just did not like me whatsoever. She's just like, get away from me, dude. So anyways, so I do terrible in school, and one day, so I'm just doing awful. And so one day I happened to be walking through a hallway in a building, and it was an ROTC building at the Finch Field House. And they were like, hey, are you in the military? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, do you ever think about becoming an officer? And I'm like, well, I really dislike being told what to do. I was like, I'll do this. I am just such an idiot. Like, I am just a meathead. It's like, yeah, whatever, I'll do it. So I sign up for ROTC, and they're like, your GPA sucks. You can't get in this program. You need to give us a course of action to fix it, and you need to explain how you're gonna fix it and a plan and go from there. I'm like, okay. Instead of picking up my academics, I went to the counselor and I said, hey, what is the easiest degree at Central Michigan University? And she's like, underwater basket weaving. And I'm like, I don't know how to swim. I'm just kidding. There's no underwater basket weaving. She looked at me dead in the face. She's like, recreation. And I was like, okay, I'll do it.
Run it.
She was just like, do you know what that means? I'm like, I like recreating. You know what I mean? So I'll just do that. So so I got a recreation degree, and I go up to the chain of command. You know, there's military leader, like active duty members that are there that teach the course. And I was like, hey, this is who I am. They gave me a PT test. I just dominate PT tests. And I was like, listen, I'm going to get a recreation degree, so my GPA is going to be fine. And they're like, you're in. They're like, recreation? They're like, you're in. So I do
That is absolutely brilliant.
they're like, we need to promote him immediately.
Sign here, my friend.
But so there's a whole tie-in why that's funny too. So again, I run into phenomenal people. Colonel Calick saw right through my bullshit because I was like this fast talker, like yeah. And if you maxed your PT test, you didn't have to do PT in the morning. I didn't know you had to do PT in the morning, but I mean they're holding you accountable. So I maxed my PT test, and I was like, well, I don't need to go. And so Colonel Calick's like, why aren't you going to PT at 05 in the morning? And I was like, well, sir, I kind of have the highest PT score around here. And he looked at me. He's like, really? You're such a good PT. You're so good at PT. You're so effective. He's like, you're going to be the PT instructor. Now be here every day at 05, and you're going to lead PT. And I'm like, he got me. But like, I was so mad because like, I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's like
I'm supposed to be able to sleep in.
yeah.
I'm the best one. They should be like me.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, here's responsibility.
I was like, sir, but I have class at 1 p.m. that day for recreation.
How am I going to make this work?
I got to go to the rock climbing class, and you're making me. So, anyways, I had to lead PT, and I had to be there every morning, every single morning. And but he did other influences that were far, far more than that. I mean, just the side-by-side mentoring, the talks, he's like, hey, you have a lot of talent, but he's like, talent is going to win the day. He's like, you better start working. And so it's just one of those men that reached out, that was able to put a little extra time and investment into me, and I was able to just gain so much from. So towards the end of my college career, I guess, I got assigned. So there's a whole other steps you have to go through. I went to airborne school. You go to LDAC, which is a leadership development assessment course in Fort Lewis, and they kind of rank you amongst your peers, like when you're running missions in the woods and stuff. And you got all these things that you got to do. Well, finally, I got my degree. I graduated, and I branched infantry, what I wanted. And Colonel Calick was an infantry lieutenant or infantry commander, and I mean he inspired me. Because he's like, there's nothing that's more leadership driven than an infantry platoon leader in the Army. So I was like, okay. So I've transitioned different National Guard units as a cadet. I went to a Delta company, 1st of the 125th Infantry, and this was an infantry company, and they were absolutely phenomenal. Like, National Guard gets a bad rep, but you go in there and you just see professionals, and you see proficient dudes. And it is a very welcoming place. But what I also liked, there was a ton of hazing. And there was not hazing is not a good, there's a ton of strict accountability standards. And that they held me to the fire. And so the time came to see if I'm going to go active duty or National Guard. And I was like, I'll go National Guard, but I want to stay with this unit. As soon as I made that commitment, we get alerted, we're going to Afghanistan. And I said, roger that. Here we go. So I go to infantry basic officer course, which is in Fort Benning for a long while. Get through that, go to language school, boom. Now I'm an infantry platoon leader, and it was probably one of the most intimidating. Outside of even more so than going to Afghanistan, is being a brand new lieutenant standing in front of a formation of dudes that have had 2-3 combat deployments, and now like they're calling me sir, and I'm in charge. Probably one of the scariest things ever. So. It was just one of those leadership lessons, and everything my parents taught me is holding people accountable, holding yourself accountable, and building that relationship. And so a lot of those people are still my family to this point, right? So fast forward through just a million more training events. Speaking of my company commander, so my direct supervisor for Delta Company, a lesson that I learned in him was he is the complete opposite of who I am, personality-wise. And he's a great leader, but he doesn't talk. I remember he didn't ask me how I was doing for like a year. Like just we'd have a meeting. He's like, Lieutenant Craig, this is what we got to do, and I'm like, Roger that, sir. And he's like, dismissed. I'm like,
stone face.
I'm like, and you is one of those people you cannot get a read on, and that's just his personality. And it's not like he disliked me, but I remember seeing that there's other leadership avenues that were just as effective. And I remember seeing it's like sometimes you've got to be the quiet guy in the room. Sometimes you got to be the observer. And sometimes it's more important to say less and speak when necessary. And that was absolutely huge. And then, throughout the years, like we became closer. And I remember that just really impacted me about how just there's different effectiveness in leadership. So.
And leadership is a really dynamic thing. I mean, because leadership can mean something different for every type of person.
Yes.
Like you may have to lead somebody one way, but you may inspire somebody else in a completely different fashion. Yep. So as a leader, you need to be really dynamic in your ability to affect people positively and bring out the best in them.
Absolutely. And here's the thing is like, is leadership an art or science? It's somewhere right in the middle, right? There is an art to talking with different people and getting the best out of people. And God, I'm sure you know this, right? With all your fighters. And, there's a science and biology to the chemicals that get fired up in adrenaline. But then you can't treat one fighter or one student the same as you do this one because they're going to shell up. Or this will bring the best out of them, will make the other person freak out. And it's a thing that's only, you can read all the books and everything that you want. The only thing you can do is just learn.
100%. You're so accurate in that, and I can attest to that, like some of the people in here, some of the highest level people, I won't name drop in particular, but I actually have to be like really hard on them and like call them out directly on their bullshit and say like, no, that is, that's an excuse. You know you're better than that. Yep. This is unacceptable. And other people, I can almost just do like encouragement and positive affirmation, and they actually bring the best out of themselves. But if you don't learn to read people correctly, you're going to have constant conflict on your hand. And some people are not ready for the psychological steps that they have to make. Like as a leader, you're trying to make someone level up. That's like all you're doing in essence, right? Is making them find accountability, making them find that fire within themselves, making them find their own strength, right? But if you don't understand the psychology or you don't understand the relationship that you have with the person, some people will rebel hard to it. Like you need a certain level of trust. They need to know that you care about them. They need to know that you have information that can help them. Like it's a really dynamic field. And that's why I feel like there's not that many great leaders. Either people lack competence or the competence to be able to do this, or maybe something within themselves tells them like that, well, man, I can't be the leader. I'm the youngest one. Like some people in your position might be like, well, these people have already done tours. So there's like, I can't give them advice or I can't hold them accountable because they've done more than me. And like leadership is, almost anybody can embrace leadership into their life, but then it also holds you accountable and holds you to certain standards. You know what I mean? And there's going to be a constant light on you to make sure that you're someone worthy of leadership.
Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So like I'm standing in front of these experienced dudes, and I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, what do I have to offer? What do I have to offer? And that was the wrong question. So it's like this is the skill sets that I have. I'm energetic. I'm going to be there early. I'm going to be the first one up. I'm going to seek advice from the people around me and bring it all together and allow them to be part of the decision-making process. If we want to make a decision or somebody has a good idea, filter it through me. Let's work on it. I will learn from it, from the learning system, and we'll distribute it out. But here's the key thing about leadership is that one thing that I learned is you are going to step on your crank. There's no doubt about it. You are going to misread somebody. You're going to say something that's off-putting. You're stressed out, especially when you're in a new leadership environment, and you might yell or you might like, and it's the lessons you learn. It's like, probably shouldn't yell. You're going to yell, and you're an idiot. And I remember I made that mistake because, like, we were in a training event, very stressful, very hot. And I was like, hey, idiot. Blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I was done, I felt so stupid because I was so weak to lose my temper in already a chaotic situation. If you lose your temper in a chaotic situation, you're a part of the problem. So thank God it was training, and pain makes you remember, because I still talk about it now, and it kind of hurts. Like, I'm like, I can't believe I did that. but I was also 23, 22.
And you have that self-reflection though within you. A lot of people don't. A lot of people will do things and they never press pause and look back and say, was that the right action? I know what you're talking about to the deepest. Sometimes the way I articulate myself, the way I say a string of words, it will actually haunt me for a short period. Like, man, I shouldn't have said that like that. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't accurately represent either who I am or the way that I actually feel, or maybe I was able to put myself in the other person's shoes and be like, man, that wasn't the right play right there.
Yeah.
So even just the fact that you're able to do that and you were able to recognize that, that shows a good leader in my opinion.
And like the lesson I learned is like, I mean, thank God for my parents, because it's called accountability. It's like, a lot of people's like, I never say sorry. And no, it's all about accountability. And so I remember that, and this kid's a private, you know what I mean? I have, in the military, like, there's a rank structure. I was like, I can call him whatever I want, right? But that's not how I wanted to run my ship. So I get everyone in a formation. I'm like, hey, listen. Before we address anything, I made a mistake. I called private such and such. I won't say his name. I called him an idiot, and that's terrible. That's not what I expect from you guys. That's not what I expect from myself, and I apologize. You're not an idiot. I'm an idiot, okay? Because you were just doing what you thought you had, and I didn't give you clear enough direction to do it. And
wow, time out for a second. That's amazing. Imagine those guys standing there in formation, looking at the person in charge, the leadership, showing vulnerability, admitting that he was wrong, stepping up and saying, you know what, you guys deserve better than that, and I'm going to give you better than that. That right there, you know how you talked about how many coaches had a massive influence on your life? I guarantee you had a huge impact on those people's lives.
100%, all of them. And what was funny is like there was a little bit of time before we reassembled for a back brief, and I was talking to one of my sergeants, and I'm like, hey, I'm going to apologize. And he's in front of everybody. He's like, don't do that. That shows weakness. And I'm like, listen, that's not how I want to do stuff. And so I remember after I did it, after I apologized to everybody and made it very known and owned it, right after I said it, I was like, man, I might lose this entire control of this platoon. I mean,
sure, the fear crept in. Like, did I just show weakness? Did I just back myself into a corner?
I was like, these guys are murderers. Like, they're savages, right? And I'm like,
you got this other leader telling you like you just showed weakness, but really you're on the right track for sure.
Yep.
But the old mindset says like, I mean, because to be honest, and I never did military service, but the traditional thing that I've seen out of the military or that I've seen from the instructors is that like, boot camp, scream in your face, talk down you, degrade you, you're this level and I'm this level. Like that's actually what I've witnessed for any experience that I've seen from the outside of the military. And I know that ran rampant for years, but I think they are shifting to better leadership now because I don't need that, in my opinion. I don't think you need to treat people like a piece of trash to bring out the best in them. I don't even believe that's anywhere near the best formula to do so. So here you are, a part of like the new wave going like, no, I'm going to admit I was wrong, but I'm going to still stand out there, powerful in front of these people. I'm still going to be accountable. I'm going to still hold them to their standards, but they're going to know like, wow, this guy can admit when he was wrong as well. That's that's a powerful part of this podcast.
Yeah. So like afterwards, you had those second thoughts, and I'm like, okay, I might lose entire control of this platoon. And then I had people come up to me like, we appreciate that, sir. We'll pick it up. And then all of a sudden, like the other members of the platoon were like, we should have guided him better. That's not your fault, sir. Don't worry about it. And all of a sudden, I was like, oh wow. I was like, that's crazy. You know what I mean? I'm like, thanks, Dad. But it just felt instinctively right. And so we go to Afghanistan, and I was a Delta Company heavy weapons platoon leader, and we're in a mountainous outpost in the Hindu Kush. I was so fortunate, right, because I was there with the people that are there. There was about 90 of us on the combat outpost, and I learned a lot, right? And I was able to learn a lot in training, but it was able to confirm everything that I've ever done in a leadership standpoint. Get up, work hard, be the first person out there, set the standard, right? And don't be afraid to say that you need help. You know what I mean? Because like I'm 23, 24 years old. I think I know what I'm doing, but when you're there,
when it's life or death,
you're
literally be like, hey, am I going to lead these people towards success or failure, which could result in the death of the people that I care about that are surrounding me?
So
that's a weight.
One of the more humbling moments I've ever had was before we left. We had like a farewell ceremony, and the moms and the parents they saw how young I was. I mean, I was very young-faced back then too. We had one soldier in particular. He was like 19. I mean, I think he was homeschooled. He's a sweet guy. And so after the goodbye ceremony, his mom comes up to me and says, "Please take care of my boy." And that made me, like, I didn't realize the weight of what I was getting into because, I understood that people get hurt. I seen it from my dad. But, like, the weight of responsibility, I remember it made me just change everything. It made me realize that this isn't chess. This is life or death. This is something that you need to get focused. And so as I was saying goodbye to my dad also made a really weird statement. Not weird, but an observation. He's like, "Man, a couple years ago, you were just, waking up late, talking to me on the phone, failing out of school." He's like, "Now you're in charge of men, of soldiers." And he's like, "It's what's crazy what 3 years will do." And I'm like, "Thanks for the added pressure, Father. Thank you, Dad." But so anyways, we get over there, and one thing that place teaches you is being humble, because the elements will humble you, the people will humble you, the missions will humble you, how hard the enemy is will humble you. Everything is just difficult. So, okay.
No, one of the things I want to bring up, but I don't want to expedite your military story if there's any more like powerful insight, because you've been dropping a lot of them. But one of the things I want to talk about is that transition back to society that wrecks so many soldiers.
Yeah.
Like, so many people get absolutely lost in the waves type deal when they try to, like, because you bring all the structure in your life, you bring this camaraderie, this brotherhood, this trust in your unit, this, like, you have a mission, you have a plan, you have things. And, like, when you come back to society, it's kind of, it's a shit show out here.
It is.
I mean, it's a circus. A lot of society people, like, most people don't have their shit together. And I'm, like, sorry if you're listening, but, like, you're probably one of the people that don't have their shit together.
Probably, if you're
Not
offended.
to the level that you could have your shit together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so when you're thrown back into this world after such a, like, structured, you have leadership, you have people that depend on you, you have a brotherhood, that transition is always fascinating to me. Like, how do people keep their lives on track? But if you have other things that you want to discuss in the military, don't skip over.
Yeah, we'll transition right into that. So, like, a lot of leadership lessons. Boom.
You did 4 years?
In the military?
Yeah.
I did 10.
10 years?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. So you came back when you were, like, 28.
Well, I was in the Guard, so, like, I was on and off. So it was, like, the 1 weekend a month, two weeks a year, right? And then when I got activated, I was basically gone for 3 years with infantry training, with officer infantry training, language school, XCTC, going to National Training Center. Like, I mean, I would come home for 2 or 3 days, 2 weeks, a month, then we'd go back training because we were getting ready for a deployment. Then we did the deployment, come home, and now it's like, all right, well, you get a month off from training, and now we'll go back to the regular drill cycle of the National Guard. So, I mean, I was basically on the go for 3 years. And so I remember as we're filtering back to the States, we're in Romania. So it's one of, like, the places where you stop, refit. I was just hanging outside of this Romanian barracks, and my friend that I've known through college, he was infantry lieutenant too. And I look at him, and while he was on the deployment, he had twins. And I was like, "Man, you're a dad. Like, that's crazy. Like, while you're gone, I mean, you had 2 kids." He's like, "Yeah." I was like, "What are you going to do after all this?" And he looks at me, he's like, "I guess the state police is hiring. I'll just do that." And I'm like, I'll do that, whatever. So
It sounds like you've blundered into so many things.
So
in your
weird,
life.
so weird.
Like, you're walking down a hallway and a guy's like, "Hey, do you want to be a lieutenant?" You're like, "Yeah, I do."
It's like,
So
sounds
you
good.
want to go out for track? Hey, you forget the baseball team. Do you want to join track? Yeah, I do.
Whatever. Yeah, so it's almost like a Forrest Gump story. Like, yeah, I'll just do this. So my wife is an absolute rock through this whole time. Like,
Yeah, so you guys got together in college, and now you're gone to the military, and you make the military relationship work, which, like, that shows the bond that you two had, because so many people, again, get wrecked in that situation. So you tell her you're coming back. You tell her you're leaving the military, because after 10 years of service, you're halfway to being like.
Yeah, I was still in the Guard until 2000, and, like, I don't know, it was just a couple of years ago that I got out. So, like, I get home, and So I'm still in the National Guard, and my wife was just phenomenal. Like she is just, well, she's from Colombia, and she didn't come here till middle school. English is her second language.
Wow. So she grew up with knowing what Colombia was like,
Oh, yeah.
seeing the difference of America.
Oh yeah, my wife is she's due in November. She's power cleaning at her CrossFit gym. You know what I mean? Like she's doing sled push.
Savage.
I cannot get her in the jiu-jitsu because I will not. She will ruin me. No. So she's great. So we get back and we ended up living in Traverse City because her family kind of ended up in Traverse City area. So we're renting a house in Traverse City, and DB's stepdad is a prosecutor for Leelanau County. Absolutely beautiful. And my wife's like, "What are you gonna do?" And I was like, "Oh, I guess the state police is hiring." She's like, "Okay." So I started putting in. I put an application in for the state police, didn't think nothing of it, and I went and interviewed for Leelanau County Sheriff's Department. They turned me down. I was still a little rough around the edges, right? Not probably as articulate or, I don't know. You kind of look at somebody and you're like,
Just not as polished.
Yeah, not in Leelanau County where there's multi-million-dollar houses and, people in yachts. So
So it seems like you almost jumped this too. So you didn't really have a lot of trouble transitioning back. Like you actually had a pretty good grasp on where you were and who you were, and you're coming back to a loving woman, and
Yeah.
so that was probably essential to you blending back into society normally, because like I said, so many people that I interview that were past military experience had a really rough time letting go of that part of their life to like open a new chapter, but you kind of just made it happen.
Yeah, so like there was challenges, right? Because like I was in charge of an infantry company or infantry platoon and doing these missions, and I was a go-to guy and I had a great reputation to like, all right. But I had my father that I could talk to on a regular basis. My uncle was in the Gulf War. My cousin Nate did 4 total tours, 2 in Iraq, 2 in Afghanistan. And the key thing is I was on the phone every single day with one of my soldiers. So whether it was my sniper section leader, whether it was my first platoon sergeant, I was on the phone every single day because, to be honest, I didn't really do anything for a month. Like my wife told me, she's like, just chill, get yourself reset, and she's like, let's get you running again. So I was on the phone with my dad every single day. I was on the phone with my soldiers, and I was starting to put applications in, and then we adopted a dog, and that really helped. Dogs just help.
Dude, dogs make life better.
Yeah, they do.
I sat on my back porch or dock. I have a dock over a pond yesterday for like probably an hour, just throwing the toy into the pond, letting the dogs swim. And I tell you what, that's some of like my favorite moments. Just like spending time. It's simple. It like dogs make life better. Hands down.
They do. So that was a transition. And sure, like there were some times I would be really bummed out, or I would have some hard times here and there, but I kind of understood. Like it was the whole concept when my mother looked at me and says, "What are you gonna do? Sit there and cry? Let's move on." And so I was like, I need to find another objective. I need to do something. So I started putting in applications, and me and my wife went to Colombia for like a month, got married, whatever. And so,
dude, I love your story.
Yeah.
No, that's what I did now. No big deal. Jumped in.
We got married, and so then we come back, and they're like, "Hey, the state police wants to do a background check." Roger that. Do a background check. I got accepted, and I was one of the last people to get into the 125th Trooper Recruit School. So I never wanted to be a police officer. I never knew anything about anything. And just for the record, I am still a trooper and sergeant with the Michigan State Police, but in no way am I a representation of them. I'm just sharing my experiences. I had no idea what it was all about. Like I had no idea. I didn't know the difference between a hole in the ground and a sheriff's deputy and a state trooper, right? So I was like, all right, so I get to recruit school. And my dad drops me off again. And we always have these funny conversations. And my dad's like, "Yeah, Roger, you kind of have a big mouth, so just shut up." Like, it's like, this isn't like the military. Like, they will fire you. Like, you can't. I was like, fine. So my dad drops me off, and we do the orientation thing. And I see these instructors in sharp uniforms, and the building's massive in Lansing. And it's a training academy where you're there from Monday through Friday. So you live there. I was like, oh, that's cool. So my dad drops me off, and after that, they do the, explanation of the parents. They do the big presentation with everybody in their uniform. The parents leave, and now they're yours. And now they start screaming and yelling, and I was like, damn, I didn't know it was gonna be like this. I was like, I've been to a ton of military schools. It was a very comfortable situation, and I just look around at my other recruits, and they're like, and I'm like, Daddy's home. I was like, this is nice. And so it was, I can't remember how long my recruit school was. It was 20 weeks. And it was great. It was great training. It's for some, it's some of the hardest thing they've ever did, which is great. And I remember we did defensive tactics. And so I wrestled, and we did a little bit of like combatives jiu-jitsu. Like, it's like, this is jiu-jitsu. It's like, this is an armbar from the top, incorrectly performed. You know what I mean? So in my head, so in the Army, they show you like a couple like moves, like this is the guard. And so people are like, do you know jiu-jitsu? And I'm like,
Yeah, I know jiu-jitsu.
I was like, I know a guard. So I was like, hey, idiot, that's a side mount. And I'm like, it's different. I know Korean jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, we call it that in my training background.
In the Army. So I get there, and I immediately notice right away, because I've been in a lot of fights before. And so I'm like, man, the defensive tactics is a little whack. It was very like Steven Seagal-ish, and but
I love that you just use that analogy, because all fighters know what that means.
Oh, yeah.
But everyone sitting at home is, might be a huge fan. Like, man, it was awesome. Then you're just like whipping people through the air. It was no problem.
He's like, have you never seen Under Siege? That man's an American treasure. So, but the instructors were very intense, and it was ran like, to be honest, it was ran like your practice outside of the meaningful content. You know what I mean? The warm ups, the intensity, the rounds, and I was like, oh, this is cool. But I mean, the rest of the stuff is kind of whack. But outside of that, it's great training. It exposes people that have never been in stressful situations. I'm just talking in the overall academy. It exposes young men and women to those situations. There's a lot of scenarios. There's a lot of shooting. There's a water swim practical and swim exercises that give people that little bit of panic. You live somewhere outside of home. You're up early doing PT. Like,
it sounds like, though, the military would like perfectly prepare you for something like this. So
Yeah.
you were going in with a huge leg up on someone that just, had never done military service and was jumping in.
Yeah. So there was a lot of inspections, and so cool. Well, a lot of recruits had a really hard time with it, right? I just enjoyed it, and I kind of had a chip on my shoulder because I wasn't too far removed from my deployment in Afghanistan, and so I just kind of like, hey, and they were not impressed. So when it came down to picking where you wanted to go, like now in the state police, you can pick where you want to go before you even get hired. Back then, you go through the entire thing. They'll give you a wish list of 10 places, and they will decide for you. So I was just like, well, I live in northern Michigan with my wife. So I kind of worked my way from northern Michigan and worked my way all the way to the west side of the state. My parents are from the west side of the state. You're going to Metro Detroit. I'm like, roger that. And so I remember telling my wife, she's like, where'd you get posted? I'm calling her on the way home on a weekend, and I'm like, we're going to Detroit, Metro Detroit. She's like, stop joking. Where? And I'm like, I'm serious. So we had to pack up and move after I graduated, and then, boom, now I'm at I'm a probationary trooper at the Metro Post that encompasses Macomb, Oakland, and Wayne County. Now is where everything starts to matter in leadership. Now everything starts to matter in accountability. Now everything starts to matter in everything that you've ever learned, because now you're having intimate interactions with people, and it could either be a good one or bad one. And it made me realize right away, when you're talking to somebody and you're performing your duties, you need to be that positive, effective leader. You need to be the leader of the situation, and a leader does not achieve that by yelling, intimidation. They do it by confidence, the way they talk, the way they articulate themselves. That's how people get positive interactions, and I learned that right away. And I also learned, I think it was my second day, I got into a use of force situation where I got assigned to work inner city Pontiac, and I mean, I wasn't even driving. I was on probation, and there was a gun deal in a parking lot, and so we're looking for these gentlemen. And just when you know what a bad guy looks like and their behavior, it exists everywhere. Like just weird gesture changes and stuff. And so these gentlemen are walking down the street, match the description. So I was like, hey, I think that's them. And my FTO was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So I jump out, and one of them gets on the ground, the other one takes off running. So as I'm running after him, the kid pulls a pistol, and I remember he was starting to turn to shoot me. And I'm like, I was like, oh, that's interesting. But I was very calm. I was like, whatever. So I pull my gun out, and I was about to take the slack off my trigger, and he looks back one more time with the gun, and he sees me with my gun out, and he trips over his own feet. So I run up on him, and I get on top of him, and I use basic wrestling.
I am speechless that you didn't shoot him
Oh, yeah.
when he was turning with a gun.
Yeah.
I would say 99% of people that didn't have the same training and confidence as you with the wrestling background, with the track, with the athleticism, you knew you were going to catch him, you had done the military service. Most police in that situation, and maybe I'm speaking out of line, but I think they would have just said, hey, I'm not going to get shot. I'm going to shoot this guy.
Yeah, it was really weird because I found that safety is pretty relative, right? So safety is
100%.
So like, let's say somebody is, I don't know, like safety is
No,
relative.
it makes perfect sense. If a random stranger, if I'm Bob Smith on the street and someone grabs me by the neck, I might completely shut down, feel so fearful in my life, shell up.
Yeah.
If someone grabs my neck here right now, we're grappling. My
Yes,
face
that's
won't even
exactly.
change.
Yeah.
Like if you could sneak up and slap me in a choke and we're just going to start grappling. Like it doesn't even register.
Yes.
Actually, I'm going to be like, now I'm going to whoop your ass.
Yeah.
You made a really big mistake.
Or like for some people, somebody grabs them by the neck. It's like life changing. I was strangled. I'm a victim. And you,
Exactly. You tried to kill me. Like, and this nothing.
I'll be
happens.
honest. I think if somebody grabbed you by the neck, you probably think it's somebody that you knew. And then
100%.
and
And
it'd
then
be
like, oh wait,
no,
this
no,
is
yeah,
actually
yeah.
real. Like,
So I had
it's relative.
it's real. Yeah. So that's actually a great example. So I was like, meh. And so my FTO was like really impressed, and I'm like, oh, all right. And for some reason, like one of the things I was really ignorant about as a young troop, I thought everyone had the same mindset, right? What I realized is we all had the same police training. However, we don't have the same background.
They don't have the track background. They don't have grown up wrestling. They don't have the family structure that you had. They don't have the confidence in themselves. Absolutely.
Yep. And then so a couple revelations I had during this time was since then I've had I can't even articulate the amount of fights and uses of force situations that I had. There's some key ones that I'll bring up here, but I when I did that, I remember just thinking right away, I'm kind of chuckling, and I'm like, man, nothing that we learned at the academy was utilized that day. So
Thank God I wrestled. Thank
Yeah.
God I had my other training.
Yep.
Otherwise, this could have been really bad.
100%. And so and what was also really nice is that, and this will tie into everything else too, is the fact that I did Taekwondo. I was forced to. I fought on a regular basis. It was still, it's still Taekwondo. And
Still fighting.
It's
Still
not
somebody
MMA.
trying to kick you in the face.
Yep. And then wrestling and Taekwondo, and like you looking at somebody, it's like this guy's gonna try to hit me, or this guy's gonna grapple me. Like that confrontation goes away. Like so, I remember after I tackled him, and everybody was like, "You okay?" And I remember just not being like, "Oh, it's just like a match." You know what I mean? Like you're so used to physical confrontation, like. I
You
didn't
just hit the nail on the head. It's such a norm
Yes.
that it's not like this wild experience that you have to, oh my God, can you believe I went through that today? You were like, oh yeah, wait, you guys didn't do that yesterday or the day before? Like, that's not what we do.
Exactly.
It's so normal.
Mm-hmm. And I remember just not even being worked up and so I was like, oh, okay, no big deal. But then, so as I'm navigating through my career, I was on the Secure City Partnership. So after I got off FTO, I was a trooper in the Secure City Partnerships, meaning that it was a group of state troopers that worked the most violent precincts in Detroit. So let's say there was an armed robbery spree. My crew and I would go in there and we would try to look for or just turn the place or let's say there was a ton of shootings. Our police presence, proactive patrols. Our mission was violent criminals and ripping pistols off the street. So I'm with these like-minded individuals, and we were in fights and pursuits and foot chases every single night. And it was not a big deal to hear, a shots fired or there was a sad time there where a lot of cops were getting shot, and we were responding to it, and we were looking for them. A ton of canine. So to me, but all these senior troopers, they were phenomenal because they were exposed to it every day. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. And finally that unit disbanded. But the real eye-opening thing happened when I got pushed out to the road, just a regular road patrol, and I was around my other peers. Not that they're terrible troopers, not that they are bad people, but they really was like a foot pursuit would happen, and you can just, their eyes are just, or they get into a use of force, and they are fired up, and they take it personal that somebody was trying to punch them. They took it personal that somebody resisted arrest, and I'm like, whoa. It's like, I didn't really get and like, okay. And I'm like,
I understand what you're saying
Yeah.
100%, but I don't know if all the listeners will. But like, it makes such perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
To you, it's just it is what it is. That's what would take place in that event.
Yep.
I had to take you down. I had to
Yeah.
restrain you. But it's not shocking. Like we would almost expect that.
Yes.
You know, versus being like, oh my God, the audacity that
Yeah.
a criminal tried to hurt me
Yeah.
for me arresting them. That's shocking.
And it's more offensive too because like, you know, we wear really nice uniforms and you know, they think that this uniform is gonna like allow everyone to comply, and it's like, but I've been through this training at the academy.
Criminals don't listen to laws. They
It's-
don't care that you have that uniform on. They don't care that you said stop.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because otherwise they wouldn't be doing armed robbery.
Yeah.
Breaking and entering.
Murder. Yeah.
Murder.
So I was starting to see that, and I'm like, okay. And then now I'm starting to become very, very aware of what's going on. Like some troopers are so experienced that they're totally fine. But like I'm looking at some of these other ones that haven't gotten into a lot of critical incidents, and it's scary.
They're unprepared.
Unprepared.
And shit's going to go really bad, either for them or for the suspect, because of the lack of preparedness, right?
Yes. And now we get into what's going on in the world, right? You're going into, like, whenever you see a police officer or a trooper, and this, like I said, this is just my opinion, or any law enforcement agency, overutilize the use of force. Here's a couple things. Number one, they haven't been to that dance very often. Number two, they don't have any training and they're scared. And so they overcompensate by an overuse of force. They take it personal because they don't train, they don't understand the normalities of confrontation, and they go overboard. Not on purpose, right? But that's just their reaction.
Honestly, it's almost the system at fault because you haven't properly prepped these people for what they're going to encounter. So when they get there, it's like you don't know how they're going to react because you haven't made it a norm.
Yeah.
If you haven't trained grappling many times, the first time someone tackles you to the ground and tries to control you against your will, who knows what's going to take place because you are not prepped for those exchanges. You know, so I think like your story has perfectly built you to be the man that can handle this situation. And actually, like the cousin that I referred to that grew up pro wrestling with me, he's an officer in Philadelphia.
Okay.
So like, and he looks at things the same way.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it's, you know, it's just what we do.
Yeah.
He trains jujitsu. He trained under Wilson Hayes for years. Like, so it's funny the parallels in the story there. But when you look at the system overall, it's like we almost need to have honest conversation that like just because you're a trooper, some criminals are not going to give a shit.
Nope.
Just because you yell stop resisting, some people are going to start swinging on you.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't want, you know, and the media is out to get you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we're going to shift to this part of the conversation, but the media is out to paint you as these horrible people ruining the lives of other people.
Yes.
And I remember when I was a younger man and I was so broke trying to chase this dream. I was so unbelievably broke, and I had a broken down car and my tabs would be expired and I would get pulled over, and then they would obviously profile me. They'd look at this broke kid, like, step out of the vehicle. Let me search your vehicle for drugs. And like, I don't do drugs. I barely drink. And I remember having this resentment, being like, God damn, why are you profiling me?
Yeah.
But as a much older, much more mature, much better situation person, I look back and I go, because I fit the description. Like, you know, they'll say that like, oh, you know, we can't profile. You're going to. All human beings, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, you're going to be like, I think that might be a duck. But I do remember at that period of my life having some resentment.
Yeah.
When I look now, I go, well, if I would have had my shit together, they wouldn't have profiled me as someone that didn't have my shit together. They wouldn't look at me as this young dreamer that's trying to launch this mega business and has given up the normal 9 to 5 and is like putting in every hour to try to make it. So of course I take offense when you're treating me like a drug dealer and you're like, even if my paperwork was good, they'd be like, sir, step out of the vehicle. And then of course, what would I do? I'd be like, I'm not stepping out of the vehicle. My paper's fine. You know, like, especially I had a couple incidents, not to get off track, where I wasn't speeding. My paperwork was good, but I'm driving a piece of shit car down Grand River, and then they stop me. And then I'm pissed because I'm like, dude, I'm broke.
Yeah,
I have a shit car. Yeah, it's falling apart, but you can't just pull me over.
Yeah.
And that's, like I said, looking back now, I feel immature about it. There was one officer I had a really bad exchange with. Really, you want to hear the story?
Oh, yeah.
Dude, me and Amanda Bobby Cooper, the girl that got to the UFC, we were dating for 5 years, and we were broke as... I was so broke, and I've never really told this story publicly.
Yeah.
We were so broke that at one point I was 3 months behind on my house payment,
Yeah.
and I was getting letters from the bank. Hey, if you don't pay this by this, you're going to lose your house. My Cobra got repossessed. I only had 4 payments left on the car. They came and repossessed my car because like I was going all in on this dream.
Oh yeah.
There was points where when we were driving from one location to another, if I ran out of gas, I had no money in my account. She had no money in her account. I was going to do a private lesson, and that private lesson was going to go in my gas tank. And if I didn't get that, like that's how broke we were. I was driving down Grand River, piece of shit car. State troopers right behind me, and Bobby's like, hey, there's a state police behind you. And I'm like, and I'm already having a tough time because, I mean, just the stress of life at that point. Man, I'm a dreamer. I'm trying to make it. She's trying to make it. She's like, I want to be in the UFC one day. I'm like, I want to be a coach of world champions. But we're good people.
Yes.
And I know that. And I have that deep in my heart. And I'm like, they're not just going to pull me over. Like, sure enough, he turns his light on, and I'm like, motherfucker. No. And I'm not speeding. I was driving from my house to the gym at the time. Yeah. Like, not doing anything wrong. So, like, I'm pissed.
Yep.
So right off the bat, there's tension, which I realized probably escalated everything. So he comes up to the window, and he's, like, license and registration. I'm like, and I just literally said, absolutely not. Like you need to tell me why you pulled me over, because that's how the law works, and you can't just stop people, okay? Like, I wasn't speeding. I wasn't going off the lines. I haven't done anything wrong. Yeah. And he goes, I swear to God, like this, Roger. You have vision obstruction. We had an air freshener hanging, one of the square ones.
Yep.
It was this big. And he goes, you have a vision obstruction. Now you're insulting my intelligence, and you're that was you being an asshole. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because I watched his eyes literally look through the car and was like, you have a vision obstruction. Yeah. Meanwhile, he has a laptop, a camera thing. He can see out of 50% of his window. Yeah. I have 99.9%.
Yeah.
So of course, I'm like, bullshit. Like, you just said that right now. This is ridiculous. And he's like, license and registration. And I realized, like, okay, well, he's going to claim that. I'm going to lose because he's a part of the system and I'm not. Yeah. So I like pull out my paperwork, but I'm giving him shit. And I'm young. So I'm giving him shit back and forth because in my mind, he is in the wrong. I'm like, dude, leave me the fuck alone. I'm just broke. Like, I know I'm not a bad citizen. I'm just so broke. You know what I mean? Like, we're trying to make it. Yeah. We're going to be fighters one day. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, and I had my fight in Brazil coming up. So we were doing okay. I just wasn't there yet. Yeah. So anyway, he takes the things back to the car and then comes back up and he's like, all right, step out of the vehicle. And I'm like, I'm not stepping out of the vehicle. And to be honest, I was an asshole to him. Yeah. But I was upset that, like, so he's like, step out of the vehicle. And I'm like, I'm not stepping out of the vehicle. Like, my license is in your hand. I gave you my insurance. I gave you my registration. He goes, my computer says your license is expired. And I'm like, dude, you're holding it in your hand. The date on the license says that it's not expired. What are you talking about? Yeah. He goes, this could be a fake. I don't know. So I realized, like, this dude is just fucking with me. Yeah. Like probably because I was an asshole to him. I did give him attitude up front. So he's like, step out of the vehicle. And I'm like, I'm not stepping out of the vehicle. And he's like, basically, yes, you are. Yeah. And I go, you're trying to say that my license is fake. Like, I made that Michigan license. Does it look fake? Is there a seal on it? And I'm like, so I tell Bobby to start filming this. So she's like filming this interaction. We're going off. Like I said, it's getting, I'm sure you being a trooper, it's getting worse and worse and worse. And he's being an asshole to me and I'm being an asshole back. Yeah. And he goes, show me the receipt from the Secretary of State that says that this license is valid. Now, first of all, why would I keep that? So I am intelligent. Yeah. So I was like, sure, hang on a second. I pull out a stack like this big from the glove box because, like I said, our shit's not. And I'm going through one paper at a time, Roger. I'm talking like, nope, that's not it. Give me a second. And he's like, I can tell, just fuming. He's like, you don't have it. Step out of the vehicle. I'm like, no, I got it. Just give me a second. Hang on. I'm going paper by paper. So I'm surprised he didn't like stun gun me or something. Yeah. I fucking find it. Shut up. I must have just thrown it in there because that's what you do. Yep. I start like dying laughing. I'm like, oh my God, I found it. You look so stupid. Now, this guy like got this look on his face. He like rips it out of my hand and he was flat out like, I don't care. Step out of the vehicle right now. I'm impounding your vehicle. He makes me get out of the car. I'm like, well, let me call my dad to come get the car because there's nothing wrong with the car. He's like, nope, you're not calling your father. So he calls a tow truck, impounds my car, and like gives me all the tickets for this with nothing, dude, just because he was super pissed. Wow. So then really what I should have done is I should have just let the incident go and accepted that I had a bad interaction with police.
Yep.
But I didn't. I had Bobby post that video online.
Yeah.
And it showed the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so on Facebook, you had this absolutely monstrous comment chain of people like, what a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
Can you believe? Someone tags him in it. So now you have the entire community. Because even then, like I was fighting professionally.
Yeah.
Bobby was fighting professionally.
Yep.
Like we're pretty well known.
Yeah.
And so everybody is just like going off like this cop is a piece of shit. And like just going off. He gets tagged in it. And I'm like, oh man. And actually, you know what's funny? Even with how poorly he treated me.
Yeah.
I remember when the Facebook thing blew up. Because when I first got home, I was like, put that up. Because this is bullshit and it shouldn't happen. But when it blew up, people were attacking this man. And I remember thinking like, man, maybe I just shouldn't have done anything. But like he was in the wrong, but yeah, I should have let it go.
Yeah.
The next part is a true story. You're not going to believe these words. And if you have any questions of it, ask Brian Fornicero. The night before my flight to Brazil, this is like 3 or 4 weeks later, the night before my flight to Brazil. So I had to pay the impound fee, everything. The Facebook thing blew up. They tagged the guy in it. It's disaster, right?
Yeah.
Me and Brian are sitting down watching The Ultimate Fighter. We had just got done training. We're sitting up there. I'm still just in my grappling shorts, not even a shirt. We're watching The Ultimate Fighter. We're all excited. Knock on my door at 11:30 at night. And I'm like, who is knocking on my door?
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? I open the door. It's that officer and another officer. I have never been more like,
Oh,
what? Well, just what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And I got my 2 dogs in my house. Brian, thank God Brian's there, or they could have probably just come in, beat my ass, or like shot me or something. Been like, this kid resisted arrest, because it was very personal.
Yeah.
Why they came over there, and the guy's like, open the door. I have a warrant for your arrest. And I'm like, I have not done anything. Like I know, like I don't have any tickets. He's like, I have a warrant for your arrest. And I remember just being so like, and I was like, what are you doing? Which and now looking back, like it was obviously he took it super personal, because pretty much the whole community was like, that guy's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So I'm like, Brian, film this. And my door, screen door is, not screen, it's glass.
Yeah.
It's shut. They don't show me the warrant, which first of all, I'm like, show me the warrant then.
Yeah.
They rip open the door. They bust into my house. I'm like, Brian, film this. The other shorter officer that was with him was like, shut that phone off. Brian puts the phone down. They bust into my house. The guy grabs me by the wrist. So I rip my arm free, and he's like, you're going to resist? And then I'm like, oh my God, they're going to get me on resisting arrest. Like, even if they're wrong here, they're going to get me on resist. So I'm trying to figure, my dogs are barking. The one officer threatens to shoot my dogs.
Yeah. Oh my God.
And I'm like, you just illegally broke into my fucking home without showing me a warrant against every right that I'm supposed to possess in this country. And I know the Bill of Rights. I know the law. Like, I love this country. I love what it stands for. I love our right. Like, I can list our amendments for you.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm in the twilight zone, Roger. It's 11:30 now. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So anyway, they handcuff me on my stairs. Like I said, the one guy threatens to shoot my dogs. I'm like, dude, you broke into my house. Like, what are you talking about? Like I said, imagine if Brian wasn't there, because Brian was able to like take my dogs, put them in another spot. And so Brian, they don't know this, and I never posted this, but we might to this day have it.
Yeah.
Brian didn't shut the phone off. He just tilted it down.
Of course.
So we recorded all the audio. And these people are like, I mean, just so out of line, it's insane. And I'm like, dude, you need to show me the warrant, because you don't have a warrant, because I haven't done anything. This is personal. And he's yelling at me, we going back and forth. And then the situation starts to calm down, and we're talking. And I'm like, no, you need to show me the warrant. You know what I mean? And he's like, well, I have a warrant for your arrest. You're going to jail tonight. And then I put the pieces together that I had just posted on Facebook that day, that like I leave for Brazil in the morning with Brian. I'm flying. This guy was trying to fuck me out of the flight to Brazil. No. So I keep saying, show me the warrant. It's no problem. He's like, well, it's on my computer in my car. I'm like, take me out there. I don't mind. Yeah. Let's go look. So he walks me out to the car, puts me in his front seat. So first of all, you can tell this is personal and nothing is procedure here. Sits me in his front seat, claims to me, my computer's having an issue. I can't pull it up. And I'm like, what is it for then? Tell me what it's for. And he's like, you had a unpaid parking ticket from like 6 years ago in a town that I have never been to, Roger. He was like, you have a unpaid parking ticket in, like, he named a town that I didn't even know was in Michigan. Yeah. Because I was like, is that in Michigan? He's like, yeah. I'm like, what? Like, I had so I'm not trying to say that someone forged a record or falsified something.
Wow.
But like, and then all of a sudden he couldn't pull it up, so he couldn't produce the warrant. It was the biggest shit show ever. And he's like, well, you're going to jail tonight, and this is on like a Friday. He's like, you know, you'll find out Monday. And I'm like, dude, I have a fight in Brazil. Like, I leave in the morning. He's like, nope, you're not. Luckily, I knew the law well enough where I was like, wait a second. I have no prior offenses. This is a nonviolent crime. I can pay 10% of this and pay bail. And I knew that law.
Yeah.
When I said that, his eyes got like, oh my God. Because he realized, like, what are you going to do now? You're going to tell me that I don't have that right?
Yeah.
So he's like, well, you have to be able to pay that in cash. And I was like, sure.
Yeah, no problem.
No problem. I got it. And I had like this tiny bit saved. I had like $300 saved up from
That
private
hurts.
lessons. So I went, got it, and they had to then write me like a receipt for it.
Interbond receipt, yeah.
Exactly. I forget what the law is that allows you to do this, to pay to not have to go to jail.
Yep. It's
But
basically a promise to show up to court.
Exactly.
Yep.
So thank God I knew about that, because otherwise they were putting me in jail and I would have missed my fight in Brazil.
Oh my God.
The second they had to start writing that, those two gentlemen became the most professional, polite, like, yeah, you know, maybe it is a mistake. Maybe there was something wrong. Like, we'll figure it out. But complete like 180. But anyway, with this whole thing being done, I had to just go first thing in the morning. It must have been a Thursday because it was Friday.
Yeah.
First thing in the morning. I wasn't going to be, they told me I won't be able to leave the country if I have this thing going on. I have a flight later that I had to go to the Livingston County Court, just plead guilty and pay the full thing to be able to leave. And this whole incident was like one of the most shocking experiences I've ever lived through in my entire life. And I remember, I tell people about this today because I'm like a big supporter of police.
Yeah.
I believe it's an important part of society. I believe they have an extremely difficult role in society.
For sure.
But I've also had my rights abused by an officer more than I could have ever even imagined. Like, for them to knock on my door that night and come in like that. So I actually had the former prosecuting attorney for here in Michigan found out about this through, because what did I do? I made a second post. Like, these people showed up at my fucking house, arrested me, threatened to shoot my dogs, couldn't produce a warrant. And basically, the former prosecuting attorney was a friend of a friend, reached out to me and said, like, you have the most slam dunk case ever against the Michigan State Police. Like, you're going to win a lawsuit like you can't even imagine.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not going to do it.
Oh.
Something about just my character. I was raised that, like, you do not sue people. You don't, like, my father put that in me. Like, no matter what happens, like, you don't sue people. You don't do that shit. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to press charges. I'm not going to sue him. And first of all, it's like a brotherhood too. Let's say this one guy, let's say he was even in the wrong 100%.
Yeah.
But he has a bunch of connections in state police. Now all of a sudden, maybe they want to fuck with me more.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, dude, I'm a dreamer. And I'm like, one day you're going to look at me as a member of the community and be like, you know, we're proud to have that guy.
Yeah.
We're thankful for him. So I dropped everything. I didn't pursue any charges. And looking back later, I can go all the way back to the day it began and can say, you know what? If I didn't have such an attitude when he first pulled me over, you know what I mean? Maybe the entire incident would have gone completely different.
Yeah.
You know, if you put yourself in my shoes, this is a young kid trying to make it. I'm trying to be successful. And I know I'm not breaking the law. I'm doing everything right.
100%.
You pulled me over. It upset me. And then instead of just being like, you know what, a car matching your description in this area has been blah, 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 blah. So I just want to stop you. Is everything good? You know, like, you're not really breaking any law. It could have gone a completely different
100%.
way. But from the moment he looked around the car and said, you have a vision obstruction, and then it just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. But the reason I'm sorry this story took so long.
No, I think so your conversation with me and how have you treated my troopers, like, it's crazy, right? Like, the things you do for law enforcement and the people that you talk to, the fact that, I mean, that is, like,
you would have never thought I had that story, right?
Yeah.
But you know what I can do, and most of society doesn't do? I can separate either a bad incident or a bad person from a bad group of people.
Yeah, it's
You know what I mean? I feel like that's how racists make it work. They go like, well, this one time, this person of particular race did this thing, so now all of them are bad.
Yeah.
That type of stereotyping to me is just as ridiculous as if that one experience I had with that officer. And like I said, you know what? The guy actually might be a decent guy.
Yeah.
Maybe he just was like, this young asshole needs to be taught a lesson. And then him and I both escalated something to where it was so far beyond where it ever should have gone.
Yeah.
But most people in our society now, it's like the people that are woke, and this is going to piss so many people off. I literally don't care.
Yeah.
So many people that are woke, that are against prejudice and stereotyping and racism and all these things, are the most stereotypical
Yeah.
people I meet. Like, not to be ridiculous, but like white males are being stereotyped against now.
Sure.
And I would have never
yeah.
thought you may have had bad experiences with an individual, with a group, or with a, even a multitude of people. Let's say you grew up in the inner city and you had bad experiences with any race over and over and over. You, if you are not using your intelligence, could come up with this theory that like these must be bad people. But then you would be wrong.
Yes.
And you have to re-engineer your thoughts, and you have to look back at your life and go, does that mean that Roger is automatically a bad person because he's a trooper as well?
Yeah.
Or should I judge someone based on the character instead of the skin color or occupation or yada, yada, yada?
You know what's crazy is these same people that will do that, like will have one bad experience. It's like, well, all cops are bad. It's like they'll go.
All cops are bastards
Yeah.
was an actual saying that people were saying last year. I had a woman on a podcast, actually a guy I used to train jiu-jitsu with, who I'm very close to, his wife. And I didn't even post the podcast because she defended that ideology, all cops are bastards. And I'm trying to have rational conversation with this woman. I'm like, I know Victoria. No one will know who it is. I know Victoria. She's a wonderful lady.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk her through this. Like, clearly her emotions are leading this conversation. I couldn't. She lives in a part of the state now or part of the country now that is incredibly one-sided on their ideology. And she has bought into the belief system that all cops are bastards. And even when I brought up like my cousin Shane, the Philadelphia officer, and I'm like, listen, like this guy's a great husband, awesome community member. He was my best friend growing up. I've watched him treat people his whole life. He's a phenomenal human being.
Yeah.
She fought me on it. She was like, well then why isn't he turning in all the bad police? You know what I mean? Like, why isn't he's basically aiding and abetting by allowing these people to do their corruption? Whoa. And I'm like, what? Like, she was so far gone that just honestly, and I wonder if she'd ever listen to this, I didn't post the podcast, the first podcast I've ever not posted.
Wow.
Because I was like, you know what? One day she will reflect back and she'll go, all cops aren't bastards. Just like all white people aren't this, or all black people aren't that, or all rich people aren't this. Like that's just dumb.
Yeah.
That's emotional.
What's crazy is these same people like go to McDonald's and get like a cheeseburger without cheese on it. And they're like, well, we'll give it another try. You know what I mean? They'll continue going back to it. They'll give restaurants second chance. They'll give, it's so what we talk about in your circumstances, which is absolutely gnarly. It was essentially a Netflix documentary. You know what I mean?
It's insane. I still have the post. I mean, I have the original video. Maybe at one point I'll send it to you in private because it's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. And like, so we can talk about defensive tactics and techniques. And I've had situations where, and I'll tell you why this is important, is that, so I started dropping in on your jiu-jitsu class. And
will you raise the mic up just a tiny bit, the levels? Yeah, perfect.
So like, my schedule really sucked. I worked a ton of overtime but I heard about this gym. I just started doing my own research because I started seeing the parallels of like, I'm starting to get dull. You know what I mean? Because I haven't wrestled since high school. I haven't done my 2 moves in jiu-jitsu since military training.
Getting a little complacent.
I'm getting complacent, and I'm getting fat. Like I was brushing my teeth one day, and my wife is like, and I'm like, what are you looking at? And so I needed to change it up. And one of my best friends owns a CrossFit gym, right? But even then, I know better, right? So it's like, what's the point of exercise in the line of work that we do if you cannot apply it to unarmed combat? Why? What's the point? You know what I mean? I'm not going to be in the WWE, I guess. So like, I need to be able to apply it. It's great to be strong, but it's just for show. So I started researching. And I went to this gym, and I could only go once in a while, and it was really disappointing because I can only go once in a while. But you went over a Kimura, right, from your back. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. So next day I go to, a couple days later, I'm back at work. I'm working the city of Detroit. Now I'm just on the freeway, and I'm noticing these troopers that are just getting overwhelmed in these situations. So there was somebody that was just walking down the middle of the freeway and holding up traffic. I was like, oh, okay. So as soon as I get out of the car, immediately alarm bells ring. This guy wants to fight. And there's a ton of people around, and I'm like, well, all right. So I walk up to him. I'm talking to him. And I'm like, hey, brother, I just want to get you off the freeway. Because I am like, anyways. So he ends up jumping me.
Yeah, you're super de-escalated.
Yeah.
I'm the same exact way. Super like, hey, man, no, let's just go over here.
Yep.
Let's just got to get you out of the way. I knew where your train of thought was going.
So, because like, I was like, I don't do all the paperwork. I was like, whatever, And so as I'm walking him over, he jumps me. So I ended up falling over the guardrail, and he's on top of me. And you went over a guard Kimura. And mind you, I'm just a wrestler. I've only watched WWF, and so now I'm on my back. I'm in full kit, full uniform, and somebody's on top of me. This dude is 240 pounds, taller than me. And so as soon as I get on my back, for some reason, because maybe it's the only thing that I learned how to do off my back, right, is coming to your class. I popped right up, put him in a Kimura, and I actually swept him. And I ended up on top of him, and I remember just being like, how did I get here? And the guy is just freaking out, and I'm on top of him, and I'm like, how did I get here? And so now the dude's exhausted. He's so exhausted. He lets me handcuff him. He is just exhausted.
As long as I can breathe, bro, wherever we need to go.
I'm just sitting here, and so like I sweep him, and now I ended up on mount, and I was just sitting on his chest, and I'm like, okay. And then the guy just got out of prison, and he was looking for a fight. I think he wanted to go back. There's several layers to it, but I remember him being like, because I had to take him to the hospital, and we're best friends. And I'm like, he's like, man, I'm really sorry about that. I know you got a family. I was like, I don't take it personal, man. It's not a big deal. I used to train and stuff, and it clicked. And then I started thinking, I'm like, what if that would have been somebody else? What if somebody's on top of you? Do you shoot him? You know what I mean? Like,
or let's say they don't take control right away, and that guy now beats them to death or takes
Exactly.
their weapon. Man, 100%.
So
a lot of times I think people don't think about what can happen to the police. They always think about what can happen to the suspect.
yes,
Listen, that could be life or death for you. What if you're a 130-pound female officer that just got tackled by
Yep.
this man and you've never been put there?
and there's videos of that. And then so like I'm starting to make all these tie-ins, right? And I'm like, wow, that's weird. And then a trooper from the west side of the state who's pursuing a mini bike or whatever, the guy crashes out, and he runs up to the dude to put him in handcuffs. Well, the guy's brother's in another car following him, gets out and puts him in a weak rear naked, like just a headlock from behind. Yep, that's it. And as a trooper was going up, he had his gun out. And this guy is a big dude, big in shape dude. So he has his gun out and then as he's holstering the handcuff, this first guy, somebody else, the dude's brother comes up, puts him in a choke, and he starts going out and he loses his gun. I mean, if somebody came up and did that to anybody that walks around in your gym, they would laugh. But now it's a dire situation. So thank God a good citizen sees it, stops it, breaks it up, gets everyone. I think he kicks the shit out of the two guys, helps him kick the shit out of the two guys, get them arrested. So shortly after that, we did a defensive tactics refresher. So in the state police, you're required to do mandatory training, which is firearms like twice a year, 2 or 3 times a year, defensive tactics, twice a year. And so I remember us at defensive tactics, and it was basically like one of those like movie self-defense classes for a suburban, mom. You know what I mean? That's everybody. All right, give me a circle.
Choreography.
Yeah.
Ha,
So
punch, knee.
it's just it was real, and nobody takes it serious, right? And so now I've had a ton of uses of force at this point. I had this personal experience with jiu-jitsu, and now I see the rear naked choke video. Like, that just happened. And so after that, we were done. They're like, all right, any questions? And I'm like, why aren't we addressing this? Like, why doesn't people know? And they're like, well, it's not authorized in the force continuum in MCOLs. We're not going to show. What if you hurt somebody? I'm like, what if you die? So
What if you have to shoot them as an alternative
Yeah.
because you don't know how to control them?
100%. So now I'm angry, and so I had a reputation in the state police where I would go out and get into stuff, right, and I got in trouble a lot, and it was obviously it was never for use of force. It was for driving fast, being in a ton of pursuits, whatever. So now it's starting to make full circle, and you're starting to see. And now I'm watching, like your instance with the incidents that you had with your trooper, like there's more of a mental health issue than people think, right? So a lot of these troopers, and a lot of them won't admit it, we deal with absolute carnage sometimes, whether it's gunshot victims, car accidents. I remember in particular one day, there was a semi-tractor trailer that traffic was at a standstill on the freeway. He blew across, destroyed 9 cars, and ended up killing a father and son. we tried to save them, right? CPR. I'll save you all the details, but we ended up losing both of them. They were actually driving from New Jersey to Michigan to go to a funeral, and their mom and sister was catching a flight there. So I remember that was a long day, a lot of people hurt, and I remember going home from work, and my wife's like, hey, you got to take the trash out. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, oh, that's weird. And you start to realize that you're dealing with crazy stuff, and then a little bit later, a 4-year-old gets run over, and you have to deal with that, and you're dealing with people being shot, or just regular instances of, child abuse, kids that are being absolutely abused. And that follows you home to work. What do you do with that, right? Like, you drive, like, at least from Afghanistan to the United States, there was a whole country. And I know veterans struggle, but, like, at least there's some degree of separation. And this violence, carnage, neglect, and what human beings, our own citizens, are willing to do to one another. You see that every day.
And honestly, it probably starts to distort your view of the world because you're not seeing as much positivity and love and connection
Yes.
and wonderful things and traits that, like, maybe somebody that's living their dream or that has a good life going on. You're in a world that naturally is going to seem more hostile and more ugly because your interactions with people are more commonly going to be that. You know what I mean? You're not like just meeting up for leadership conferences and hearing stories of inspiration.
Yeah.
So I can imagine just from hearing your words, I'm putting myself in that shoes. And I'm thinking, like, man, like, your world perception could easily get distorted, especially if you don't have great outlets or great things to keep you based in reality.
And I'm glad you said outlets, right? Because when you deal with those incidents, I mean, some nights, I remember the gentleman you met, Zarati. He's a great human being. When he was my sergeant, it was a bloodbath with fatal accidents, with shootings, with officer-involved shootings, with, we're tracking this person down, we're doing first aid on this person. And then you just go home. And you're doing the dishes, and then you kind of start isolating yourself from everybody else, right? So you go to work, and who can relate to you the most, right, is the people in your same profession. I'm not a drinker, right, but I would see a lot of my peers. They'd go out and grab a few beers after work. We just need to wind down, and then we just need to wind down when we get home. And when they hang out, they want to hang out with each other. And what do we talk about when we hang out with each other? We talk about work, and now you get this distorted view. Now, honestly, there's PTS, right? It's post-traumatic stress, but now you're just reliving it every single day. And you don't have an outlet. And a lot of people don't have time. We work 12-hour shifts. We work overtime. We got this obligation, that obligation.
And try to talk to anyone that doesn't understand about what you're dealing with and the traumas that you're going through and stuff. And most people are going to shut down, or they can't relate.
Yeah.
So you don't have, it's almost like, I mean, I don't mean to sound this in a weird way, but like, it's almost like police should have a therapist that they should have to see on a regular basis. Or if they don't have such a strong, like I'm sure your wife and other people that are very influential are crucial to that, because otherwise that shit's going to build in your mind.
Oh, yeah.
And you're going to carry more and more and more and more and more. And especially if you're being hated on by society and you're being told that all cops are bastards and we should defund the police, and you're out there, the first one on a scene witnessing a father and a son killed, you're trying to give CPR to a citizen, you're witnessing all these horrors of the world that most people are blind to, and you're being told that you're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
That is a wild thing to try to keep a healthy psychology.
Well, it's kind of, I kind of see it because I've only been a trooper for 8 years.
That's a long time still.
Yeah. God, yeah, now it's crazy.
I thought you were going to say 3 years when you said I've only been a trooper for 8 years. It's almost a decade that you've been out there doing this.
Yeah. I kind of look at it as a leaky roof, right? Oh, it's a little leak. It's just a little drips of water.
No big deal.
And then that fucker collapses, and you got to rebuild. And I've seen it collapse in soldiers. Unfortunately, I've had soldiers that I know that have killed themselves, right? And now I remember seeing that in their eyes, right? I'm like, man, I need something. And now I'm starting to see it in troopers. They talk about the same thing. They have a distorted vision of the world. They're stressed out. We don't sleep a lot. We work extended hours. You see just horrific things. You're around the same people. Your marriage probably sucks, right? Like there could be a total thing.
And you might be turning to alcohol, like you said, which is not going to make the problem any better.
I just have a
it
few
might
beers.
numb you a little bit, but then it's going to become the process by which you deal with it,
Yep.
which is then going to take you down to a darker place.
Yep. Now you're hungover. You're not working out. All right. Now you're hungry. You're eating whatever's fast. You're not preparing anything. And then you run into somebody that's mouthing off to you on a traffic stop and you detonate.
Or some young kid that's driving this piece of shit car that gave you attitude when you came up and you're like, you know what? This guy's the problem.
And it could be, and it could be worse than that, right? Where, it's somebody that isn't deserving and they misread whatever's going on and they detonate. Or somebody takes off on foot and they catch them. And the guy resists and they just detonate, or everything just kind of, that leaky roof collapses when they're in front of a citizen. That leaky roof collapses when they're on the scene of a crash. And now the world is watching. So I'm starting to see that. And so now I'm starting to become a believer in jiu-jitsu because of my personal experiences. But I remember there's some days I struggle, right? The kid stuff kills me and I struggle. And as much as you love your wife, it's hard to. I don't really like to talk about my feelings, and we have kids, and there's never a good time to be like, hey, honey, can you sit down? I want to talk about all the terrible stuff I've seen in my entire life. You ready? You ready? All right, son, go ahead, have a seat. I'm gonna talk to your mom. I didn't even know how to break the ice with my wife, right? But I come here, and I'm getting strangled, and I'm sweating. And all of a sudden, everything that I have to worry about is gone. It's gone. And then afterwards, I'm sitting there because I'm not good to drive ever because Daddy's a little out of shape, okay? I'm sitting there. I'm drinking water. I'm not thinking about anything besides the moment. I'm not thinking about anything about how much I got and the progress that I made. And I'm like, this could be something, right? And so now I go back to work, and I'm slowly introducing the idea as a trooper now. So one of my friends, John Biafor, he finds a jiu-jitsu gym, loves it, right? And we had similar experiences for a while. He falls in love with it, and it's making him healthier. And then I have a new partner, Brennan Kelly, absolute. He was a collegiate wrestler, and he was getting out of shape. And I remember I was having a conversation because we went through a lot of difficult situations together at work, and he was getting fat. Sorry, Brennan, you're in shape now, though. But he's like, I think I'm about coaching wrestling. And I'm like, don't coach. I mean, that's great. Coach wrestling. I mean, you're a great wrestler. But I was like, I've been going to the jiu-jitsu gym every once in a while. I was like, he's like, what's that? And I'm like, it's like wrestling. And he's like, well, whatever, I'll try it. He's a freaking purple belt now. And he murders me, which sucks. It's not fun. But, and now all of a sudden he's eating healthier, right? Because he doesn't want to go there and get rolled up by kids. So he's eating healthier. So he's losing weight. He's doing more workouts on his own. He does a CrossFit gym. He goes to jiu-jitsu. Now he's living like a samurai. And you know what? He was much happier. I'm much happier. And the people that started were much happier than they did without it, right? Like, you're not going to meet a person that starts living this lifestyle, that starts finding stuff, that misses, you know what? I want to just go get hammered at a bar and then talk about how terrible work is. Nobody misses that. But that's the life that they exist in. So
what you just hit on, without going too much into my past, my mother committed suicide, and I was in a relationship of 2.5 years. I thought the love of my life, the woman that my parents made me move across the country here to Michigan, and that girl hung herself. We tried to make a long distance. So the words that you just used when you said during that time, like, I mean, literally verbatim, I went to a jiu-jitsu gym the first time, and there's these people trying to strangle me, and I'm trying to survive, and I'm trying to figure out what's going on. In that little moment of time, all of the other shit didn't exist. All the pain that I was going through, all the damage that I had to work through, all the mental trauma that I had to go through, none of that existed. And in that moment in time, I was just a human being struggling, but like working. And at the end, I would feel a little better. And now all that shit would come pouring back in a little bit after. But I found that these little moments, like I said, not to take it far off, but I got to the point where I was 95% sure I was going to commit suicide. I lost my mother. God. I lost the girl that I thought was the love of my life. And I was like, I'm not going forward. I'm done. It is what it is. Because you're young, you don't really see the big picture yet. Yeah. I was positive I was going to take my own life. And through jiu-jitsu, something clicked in me that, like, maybe life doesn't have to be the way that it is right now.
Yeah.
Maybe there is a better outlet to this. Maybe a lot of this shit is out of my control, but maybe there's more in my control that if I took charge of, I could actually steer this thing in a good direction. It's funny that we're having this conversation right now because I'm wearing a shirt that's in just all black letters, but it says, "Jiu-Jitsu saved my life."
Yeah.
And I really, as weird as it is to say that, I can attribute jiu-jitsu to saving my life. Yeah. And you mentioned the word samurai. Like, I have a massive samurai tattoo cutting off a demon's head. And the idea of that tattoo is all of the self-doubt, the hatred, the anger, the trauma, the difficulty. That demon's not a physical thing. That's the things that lives in your mind and that grows within you. And if you don't learn how to be a samurai in your life, like, that demon will win. Yeah. And that demon wins with a lot of people. And it drags you into alcoholism. It drags you to suicide. It drags you to doing things that don't match your character. Like, all of a sudden, like you said, one officer goes home one day and then beats the shit out of his wife. Yep. And before, he never would have thought that he would even be capable of that.
The person that started the academy would just be so upset. And then you fast forward 10 years later, 40 pounds later, amount of critical incidents, tension, financial trouble.
Like I'm saying, that demon grows. Like, what you feed your mind is who you'll become. What we think we become is what the Buddha said, right? So through that process, you and I have now discovered healing, which then turns to an addiction because it helps you level up, like as Jocko and all the people talk about. So what we almost need to do is educate these people that, like, because I'm sure a lot of troopers at their core are very good people that are thrown into extremely difficult circumstances. They have no outlet. They have no simple process that they like, man, if I follow this, it's probably going to keep me on the right track. You're just put out there and you're like, hey, be tough, man up, go out there, be an officer, and, do the right thing. We need to come up with more processes. We need to come up with more solutions. We need to openly speak about this stuff more. Like, how many people are too afraid to even admit the difficulties or the vulnerabilities that they have for fear of being judged? The same way that you stood in front of those your cadets and you said, hey, I was wrong here. Yeah. What I did was out of line, and I shouldn't have treated you like that, and I'm going to be a better leader than that. We need to bring these things back in, which is actually a conversation I'd like to have on this podcast, where strong men are essential in my mind. And, like, I hate when I can't use a fucking sentence like strong men are essential without people being like, well, what about strong women? Well, what about toxic masculinity? Well, what about this? What about this? Don't take my words other than anything besides what I am literally saying. Yeah. Strong men are essential for a society to be healthy. Yes. Especially mentally healthy. Yes. Not even just physically healthy. You need people that are willing to have the characteristics of strong leaders. Yep. They can show vulnerability. They can be strong. They can, they can put their foot down. They can sometimes, even show a little bit of aggression. Yeah, 100%. It might piss you off to think, but, like, if you are disrespecting me or my family or a good group of people, I'm going to get a little aggressive at you. Not physically, but I'm going to quickly assert to you that doesn't fly here.
This isn't the internet, friend.
100%. Like, listen, you might be able to say that to the people with no self-esteem in your life that you can bully around, but you won't say that here.
Negative.
And we need more people like that. So if anything, I want more masculinity out of men. Yeah. I want men to step up to the plate more. Yep. I want you to be more assertive. I want you to walk with your chest strong. And that doesn't mean to put others down. Like, that's where the disconnect is. By being a strong man, that doesn't mean you overpower others. That doesn't mean you make the person without self-esteem feel worse. You just set an example.
You inspire.
You show what you are capable of being, and then hopefully that other human being goes, well, then maybe I'm capable of this. Because when you unlock your personal potential, you absolutely show other people that that potential exists. Yep. Now, whether they pursue it is on them. Yep. But I believe, like, have you seen an erosion of, like, a strong, like, your father? Yeah. You watched an example of a strong male figure.
Hard dude.
Who flat out was like, oh, you want to quit? Guess what?
Negative.
Tough shit. Yep. Negative. You're not doing it. You're going to develop character. And you could have gone one of two paths. Roger could have turned into resentment. I hate my father. Why is he so mean? Why does he hold me accountable? Why doesn't he just let me stay home and sleep? And the same way that the guy that said, hey, you're running at 0500, guess who's running PT, buddy? You're the best one. Most people say, well, I'm the best one, so I shouldn't have to do it. They said, tough luck. Yep. You know what I mean? So in your field, you have a lot of type A personalities, for sure. A lot of assertive, but I think there could be more restructuring of, like, how to be powerful men that don't overstep,
Yes.
that don't bully. Because there's a huge, like, listen, a strong male can bully or they can inspire.
Yes.
They can de-escalate or they can aggressively
They can
attack.
just show you how tough they are.
Have you noticed that? Would you say the majority of state troopers are what we're speaking of now, or do they create a shell or an illusion of the power? Because you and I can instantly detect whether someone's words match their character. Like if you're going to present yourself as a big, strong man, I can quickly see through it, whether you actually have the confidence to back that or if you're overly trying to assert yourself. And then, honestly, it almost pisses me off because I'm like, hey, you're full of shit.
Yeah, you don't know what you're doing. That's the reason why you're acting like that. So there's a wide brand of people, right? You got your storytellers. It's like in any job. And the state police, I mean, it's effective in one way because we're recruiting all sorts of different types of people, different types of personality, because somebody has to work computer crimes and deal with the child sex porn, right? That's not me. But some people make that their mission. Some people want to work fraud. That's not me, right? So one thing that I am really, really concerned about is that I don't really watch the news that much, but a lot of troopers do watch the news.
Don't watch the news.
Yeah. So a lot of uniform guys, like people. So I'm a sergeant now, and now I have more of a reach and more of a volume. I have more of a I can get to more people than just the people that were immediately around me at work. You know, what worries me is that they look at the media and they look at what's going on, and it's going to affect them from doing a good job, and they think whatever the media says is what the people believe, and they're going to start treating people the way they're being treated on the media.
These people hate me anyway, so what does it matter?
Let me see your license. It's like, you know why. That's not how we do things. That's not how we do things in the state police. And then, so the personality is wide brand, but that's what worries me is that cops hang out with cops. Cops hang out with people with similar personalities, type A's. They don't really, it's kind of like a little clique that they get. And even there's cliques amongst departments where this group of people hang out that are cops and this group of people hang out that are cops. So there's cliques. And so everyone just kind of gets comfortable and complacent, and they can get complacent at work. Even your best performing troopers can get complacent because they're really good at their job and they don't start seeing to their left and right. And the ones that are terrible at their job find their little honey hole, and this is what I do. I'm just going to take accidents and check in and out of work, and I want to avoid confrontation. And then you get the other ones is like, by the way, at the academy, we'd box at the academy, or we used to. And they would ask a question. Who here has ever been in a fight? I look around. I'm like one of two people. And so you're getting people that have never been in a fight before to go into an altercation with bad people out on the street.
And I hate to admit this, but society is getting soft, man. Like even when we were younger,
oh,
if
yeah.
you got into a fight, it was like a part of life.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this outrage. Oh my God, can you
assaulted him.
Like nowadays it's like words are violence.
Yep.
Like how dare you say this thing that I might interpret as something that now I have anxiety over.
Yeah.
We need to it's so hard to phrase this because don't take my words wrong. I want to live in a world with the least problems and stress and chaos and people love all on each other and things are wonderful. But just like in nature, there unfortunately are bad people. And they might not be bad people because they were born that way. Maybe it was their environment. Maybe it was their parents. Maybe it was drugs. Maybe it was yada, yada, yada. But the world has gotten so soft and you need, like, to be in your position, you almost, I hate to say it, but you have a way bigger responsibility to be a powerful, strong leader, male.
Yeah.
And, or like I said, if you're a female, same thing, strong leader, female, than just someone that works at Costco. Mm-hmm. And if you don't take that your personal responsibility, you're not only doing a disservice to yourself, you are doing a disservice to your community, because then when things start to escalate, you can't handle it. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden a physical altercation happens and instead you shoot the person because you're like, well, it's me or them. Versus if you had proper training, you had proper mindset, you probably could have handled that situation before it even started to escalate.
So there's so when I get to that, like, your most effective de-escalation comes from the people that know what they're doing. So when I walk into this gym, you have absolute assassins, sweetest people on earth. They might not look like your stereotypical, like, nice dudes with tattoos, this, that, listening to music, hitting pads. hey friend, how you doing? And
Hey, what's up? I'm Taylor. Nice to meet you.
exactly. Hey brother, the sweetest people on earth. That's the culture that police need to understand. If you know what you're doing and you're confident in yourself and abilities, you're able to de-escalate, because all of a sudden somebody's like, well, no, fuck you. Are you challenging my manhood? No, you're like, oh yeah, fuck me. That's fine. Oh, that's all right, buddy. You don't need to prove yourself, because you're training you know what you're capable of. And then more importantly, you know what you're not capable of. So you don't get yourself into a situation where you're going to get hurt. You're able to talk more, because
you know what? You're closer in touch with reality instead of presenting this illusion and trying to be like, respect this character that I'm presenting. Oh shit, I hope this doesn't turn physical.
Yeah.
A guy like you or I, like, hey, that's real confidence.
Yeah.
If it turns physical, it turns physical.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to try to shout at you to make it not be physical. I'm just going to treat you normally. And then if you take it to that road, that was on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm fine to go there.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to beat your ass.
Yep.
I want this situation to just be handled.
Yep.
But it takes real power within yourself to do that.
It does.
If you have an illusion, people are going to call out that illusion from time to time. And then usually that's where emotions flare. Mm-hmm. Because all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, like they're actually challenging me.
Yeah, I'm totally like you can tell for the people that train, totally detached. Like I now I know troopers. Like I've been assisting on stops and watching them. People are like, I cannot believe you did this. It's like, well, that's kind of my job, friend. Can I see your ID? They're like, well, he's like, hey, I know you're upset. And I'm just listening to them talk, and they train. And then you get somebody, the out of shape, the sweat, and that's the ones that are freaking out. So de-escalation works when you have the skill set to back it up, right?
100%. So let me ask you a question then, because like, you know these things, and I think to anyone that is involved in leadership or like being like having this assertiveness in the correct way, and I just don't want to sound rude with it, but this is like common fucking sense.
It is.
That we have to have this type of training and process in place. Why do we not?
James, you've been around long enough to know that common sense isn't common, right? But everybody's so steadfast on the way things used to be, right? And I think you probably know that from martial. Like, think about the evolution of jiu-jitsu, right? So I'm just getting into the jiu-jitsu game. Like, I've been coming to your classes on and off for like a year and a half. I'm able to go more now, but I'm studying and reading about it more, and I'm looking at the evolution of the leg locks. Like, it's right there. Why wouldn't you do it? But there was a big resistance against it. And change like that in a big cultural standpoint is different. So now I've been bringing up the argument since I was a trooper, like, hey, like there's good places here, good human beings that are running the gyms, quality people. Why don't we just do something and bring these coaches in?
I understand the conflict of interest of being like, well, we don't want to put our people in the wrong environments,
Yes.
and now all of a sudden you have conflict. But the right people are out there.
Yeah.
And you might have to find them, or like you said, bring them in, find the right people, scout them, bring them in and say, hey, we're going to make sure that our police have the training so that we're going to have the #1 police force in the nation.
Yes.
And when our people de-escalate things better than everybody else, and our people live better lives and they're healthier psychologically and physically, we're going to set the new gold standard that all the other states are going to go, wow, what are the Michigan State Police doing? And you know what? Then when you're a part of something, you like when you're a part of an elite program or a military unit or things like that, it raises your level and all the people around you, because you know you're something better. You're not just a random, I don't want to just throw out a state, New Jersey police that are, doing whatever. You're like, no, we're the gold standard. We're going to train better. We're going to hold ourselves accountable more.
And our department prides ourselves on how difficult the academy is, the training, this, and this. And I'm like, here's our chance. But the argument that I received was like, well, we don't want, illegal holds to be taught. And I'm like, listen. Our DT refreshers, that the suburban self-defense class, that could just be an articulation of what force is authorized, when it's not authorized, how to escalate, how to de-escalate. That should be defensive tactics. And then when we do rehearse some moves that we're doing, you got so many people that are training already. Now that training is going to be more effective and applicable. But so the whole goal is we don't want to do an illegal move. And I'm like, listen to me.
Something, I want you to keep on this up, but something pisses me off about that, about the fact that if things escalate bad enough, you're going to shoot the person. You're going to take their life from them. You're going to kill them.
Yep.
But you're nervous that if you apply a hold that might subdue a suspect and it might traumatize them, that's wrong.
Yeah.
What type of idiotic system would you... Okay, you know what? He tackled me. I could have swept him and taken him out and applied a choke, but instead I had to execute him because we were... Does that make any fucking sense?
No.
Not at all. Like, you should be able to do anything that prevents you from having to take someone's life from them.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because that is the end game. If I can't control you and I have a gun and you are trying to beat my ass, and then you might take, the end game is I might have to kill you.
Yeah.
So if that is the end game, we should be able to do anything in our power to not take the life of another human being.
People are so okay with a taser. I don't use a taser because it's a piece of equipment that can fail you. And
I've seen videos of like people get tased and they're just still like right in it. And that's like, whoa, that's shocking.
But people are okay with tasers. Like, these probes penetrate your skin, right? But you're mad if, like, somebody, sweeps somebody in a move that was not instructed by
you
MCO.
put weight on his diaphragm. How dare you?
How dare you, sir? And so like, so I remember running in the roadblocks. Now I'm promoted, and now I get more of a voice, right? However, there's still those resistance. So I was like, all right, this is my plan. I am going to recruit and bring in as much people to this place, to a jiu-jitsu place near them. I'm going to do it as much as possible. And I start with one person. I said, because I transferred from the Metro South Post to the Metro North Post. So now I'm around essentially new people. And I just look at him and I was like, hey, you do CrossFit? He's like, yeah. I was like, I do CrossFit too. And blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what's the point of doing that if you can't apply it to unarmed combat? And the kid looks at me. He's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, have you ever thought about doing jiu-jitsu? And he's like, no. And I was like, come to my gym. And he's like, okay, Sarge, I'm coming. Shows up, and afterwards he's like, I didn't know how vulnerable I was. I didn't know how out of shape I was. This whole thing has changed me. And then that person talks to the next trooper, and then you get a trooper walking in. Hey, Sarge, I heard you do jiu-jitsu. When do you go? I'm like, I try to make it this time. They show in love, and now it's catching wildfire. And
I was just telling you before the podcast, we just had 2 more police officers enrolled last week. I think we're actually at about 20 police families.
You have your own department.
Yeah, we actually have troopers, local, FBI, a CIA family that's trained here. Like they're seeing the benefit and the culture, because the culture of a place has to be correct.
Yep.
I think otherwise it could turn bad really quickly.
100%.
You need positive culture.
And here's the thing, though, is like, so now we're getting to the point of, like, a lot of these troopers have their habits of getting a few beers after work. They hang out with each other. Guess what they do? They're rolling with other people. And there's nothing more intimate than that, right? You're rolling with different races, backgrounds, and you are sharing this moment. You need each other to train, to effectively train. You're trusting each other to tap. And now you're just talking to people and making friends with people you would never talk to in a million years outside of cops. So pretty crazy, right?
What a great way, as we said before, to like come back to reality. If your perception was starting to get distorted and you're like, well, I've been in this area and all these people, now you're like, wow, these are regular people. He's way different than me. He's a different race than me, different status. This is a high school kid, and then I trained with a 40-year-old business owner. Man, these are good people. And we're interacting, and we're sharing in a bond, and we're physically working out, but we're mentally working out. It helps. I bet you it brings you closer to reality again.
100%.
And it's a form of therapy.
It is.
Jiu-jitsu is therapy,
It is.
man.
So, like, you have a bad week at work with whatever the world throws at you that's sometimes terrible. Sometimes it's stress. You forget about it. You're interacting with people in your community. Different races, different backgrounds, y'all now share a common bond.
And these are tangible things. When the news is telling you to be outraged, why are they telling you to be outraged? Because you'll tune in again.
Yep.
Because you'll give your action. You'll give your dollars. You will support whoever they tell you to support. You're getting detached from reality, versus when you're doing jiu-jitsu and you're a member of your community, you're becoming attached to reality. So it's like, if more people could look at their processes, and they have to know these solutions are available, but they go like, man, I don't need to go home, drink a couple beers, feel like shit, turn on the news where they tell me that I'm hated and the world hates me and this is bad and that's good. You know what? I had some great rounds with a couple good guys. I worked with this guy, I got strangled one round. I applied some technique this round. I made progress.
Yes.
It's like you would fix a lot of the broken parts of the system. It's just what we really need to do is we need to get it to penetrate to such a high level that the people that sit behind a desk that are also detached from reality start to go, man, this can save our troopers' lives, and this can save the lives of the people that they encounter.
And for the long run, health benefits, better relationships, better interaction. So like I was a new sergeant, right? And I kind of have a reputation coming in, and I'm very upfront about the standards and my expectations. all of a sudden, these troopers are going to jiu-jitsu, and all of a sudden we have this crazy bond, you know what I mean? And like now we have this tight relationship, and that's all these dudes are talking about. I can't leave work on time because the troopers that come into work to work the night shift, they want to sit and talk to me. I was like, you went to 3 classes, go to more. I got to go. And so we're building this relationship. And then I realized the decision-making process, right? So when you're doing jiu-jitsu, the walls are closing in on you, and you have to make correct decisions. You have to
under stress.
Under stress. And what do we do for a living?
Make decisions under stress.
And whose life is on the line?
Both people's.
Exactly.
Not even just yours.
Exactly. And so like these enormous benefits. So that's why whenever I run into a roadblock, and I guarantee you're the same way, because you wouldn't have this megaplex without it, right? You wouldn't have what you have without it. You run into a problem, you're like, roger that. I got to just find a way to go around it. I got to find a way to get through it.
I don't even stress about it. I literally go, how am I going to solve it?
Yeah, you're like, all right, whatever. And then if you get beat down so much, it is like jiu-jitsu. I tap. All right, I don't quit. I'm just resetting and finding a different way. And so I brought it up to people, and you get a lot of the, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to get as many people around me, as many troopers, as many law enforcement officers, anybody around me to go. And guess what? You're not going to be able to stop it.
That's how you actually influence change. When you get enough people that all, especially when the results speak for themselves.
Yeah.
When you see people being healthier, happier, better at their jobs, performing better, holding higher standards, and creating bonds, not with just themselves, because that bond's always existed, but with community, with going like, hey, there's a big difference between good people and bad people.
Yeah,
and
huge.
I need to be able to discern the difference. I can't just start looking at everyone as anyone that I interact with is a criminal that I need to be on edge about. 100%.
Hypothetically, let's say somebody walks in with a bias, right? They have a racial bias, and all of a sudden they roll with a person that's the race that they had a bias with, and they have a great time. They trust each other. They laugh. They debrief, and everything starts to deteriorate, doesn't it?
What happens is they start questioning that preformed idea. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I thought that all. I'm going to just say blue people because I'm not going to throw myself under the bus. I thought all blue people treated me like this and this and this. But man, I've been working with this guy, and he's like me. He's like, he works really hard. He's a nice guy.
Yeah.
He's respectful. Like, what's going on here?
Like,
well, maybe it's just him. And then they have another one, and then another one.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it brings you back to reality, and you go, okay. Because like in the face of the truth, racism and stereotypes and these things fall apart.
Yep.
And a lot of the time it's hard to be outraged when you actually just start coming back down to earth. So like there's a machine out there that is designed to keep you away from reality.
Yes.
There's other processes by which you can come back to reality. And then all of a sudden, you know what? Then you detach from the machine. I haven't had cable television, no joke, in 10 years.
Me either.
10 years. I don't have cable TV.
Yeah.
I do not give a shit about the news at all.
Nope.
The only time I've ever been drugged into the news in my adult life was during the coronavirus crisis. And then you could see my face. I was on the national Fox News going like, you guys are a little misled here.
Yeah.
Because like normally I stay out of that world as much as possible. Like I don't want to be involved in politics. I don't want to be involved in this. I don't want to be involved until it's literally beating down my front door and I go, okay.
Here we go.
I have to take a stance.
Well, it's kind of like you too. I've never done anything like this. Like I was nervous. Like I'm like, but like you caught me at a totally weird time. By the way, shout out to Eric. He just got promoted to purple belt. Phenomenal guy. Like he takes the time out to roll with me extra rounds, and he destroys me, and it's awesome, and I love it. And he's just such a valuable asset to your gym. So like, we rolled together, and I was like, yeah, after a post roll, a post MMA session, a post whatever you do in here, when it's hot and you get the grind out, you have endorphins just kicking. You could have asked me to do anything. You're like, hey, do you mind running into that wall? I'm like, yeah, well, why not? I'll take a bite out of that dumbbell. And you're like, hey, and we started talking. He's like, you should do my podcast. I'm like, yeah, I should do a podcast. Yeah, why not? I should do a podcast. I'm going home showering, and I'm like,
I caught you at the perfect
I
time.
was like, he got me. So,
and you know what? There's one other thing that I'm going to tap into that. There are people in here that lean incredibly far left, like super far left.
Yeah.
And there are incredibly far right, super far right people. And you know what? They treat each other like human beings. They come together.
Yes.
They show mutual respect. They may have completely different opinions on different topics.
100%.
But on the mat, they're two human beings that are interacting and giving each other the respect that we all deserve.
Yeah.
There's rich and poor. There's leaders and followers. but everybody finds the humanity in each other
Yes.
when they come together in a proper culture.
Yep.
And I think that, like, if it can be done on this scale, it can be done on a mega scale.
Yeah.
It's just like you have to look at who is guiding your thoughts, who is guiding your outrage, who is guiding your perception of the world. And most people, it's not reality. It is what they are being force fed, which is why, like, I try to have a conversation with some of these people, and like the exact same fucking thing that I saw in the headline of an article, or what, whatever political person said, that's what they say. And I'm like, you need to be an original thinker.
Yeah, have your own thoughts.
You're just literally parroting what you've heard without the information behind it, and you're like a perfect zombie or like a perfect sheep. Like
You're a puppet.
You're a little drone that goes out and says, "My leader said to spread this message." We need to get away from these things, man, because it's not healthy. And society, in my opinion, and I don't care if people disagree or not, I believe we are going in a very sad direction. I believe we're going in a very poor future because you have people that are living to be outraged.
Yeah. Yep.
Man, like there was some people that were outraged when we were younger, but man, now everybody's outraged. Everybody's upset. Everybody's on a triumphant cause to take down whatever they declare as the enemy. And for these people, it's this, and for these people, it's that. And it's like, man, come back down to reality. Come to a jiu-jitsu class.
Yeah.
Shake someone in your community's hand. Give a person a hug.
God.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And if we can start pushing the needle this direction, things will be better. You know what I mean? The second you demonize other groups, whether it's
Anything.
all cops are bastards or Democrats are this or Republicans are this, what you should say is some Democrats may be blah. And that statement may or may not be true. Some Republicans may be this. The second you start demonizing that that is different than you does not take us in a good direction. You know what I mean? And that's why, like, man, I've got so much love for people in here that are far left, and I have so much love for people that are far right. I have so much love for people that are rich and people that are poor in here.
Yep.
Because I treat them based on them as a human being.
Yes.
And that's where you're closer to reality.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like Martin Luther King didn't do all that work for us to just be like, you're a Democrat, you must be a piece of shit, or you're a Republican, you must hate all these type of people. Man, we just need to stop that shit.
I 100%.
And there could be a whole nother podcast on this, so I don't want to get off that topic. But I have a question for you then, Roger. How do we, besides these small ripples that you're making, like let's say somebody like me, I've been coaching over a decade. I've put males and females in the UFC. I've worked with law enforcement a ton of times. Is there any way that I could get to someone within the Michigan State Police to at least sit down with like leadership of them and like, don't take me on my word at my value. Let me prove my value to you. Bring me in for free.
Yeah.
I'm not talking like, oh, I want to make money off this. We're very successful. We do really well.
Yeah.
How can I have a positive influence on my community to create more Roger Craigs and less, fly off the handle emotional people, because it's better for our society. I don't give a shit if you're left or right. I don't give a shit if you're old or young. I want to make the world around me a better place. So how does someone, because you see the strings that control the system.
Yeah.
You're on the inside. How do we actually influence change? Or do you think that it has to come from within? Because like, let's say you being a sergeant, you start showing results, you start showing the effectiveness of these things, and you get to the right people. How do we change things in a better direction? Because you and I both know what we know.
Yeah.
But we have to make the people that influence change know these things.
So that's what I started the whole effect, right? The avalanche effect. I push the stone down the snowy hill, and we're building traction, right? Because, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm glad that you want to talk to somebody to help, to start bringing awareness and to start doing this. And so I got a couple courses of actions that I've been thinking through. I've been trying to get as many people into this as possible. So now we have an army of practitioners, right? And it has enormous effects. So it's not just what Roger Craig believes. It's what an entire post believes, right? All of a sudden, your reach goes so far, because I have people from the Metro North Post and Metro South Post going to this. And then you have troops who, probably aren't as outspoken or as, they probably just focus on their own thing. There's jiu-jitsu practitioners in this department that are really, really good and they do a great job, but they're not trying to sell it like they should, right? So my responsibility is I have to sell it. So I want to get as many people on this movement, and it doesn't even have to be jiu-jitsu. Just do boxing, just do something that allows you to move athletically and laterally. So once I get that going, now it's going to give me credibility. It's going to give me credibility to be like, listen, this person here, James, he's given all your troopers a gift. You have no idea. And this is the benefits that we have. And he's willing to help. And so one of the things that I've had to think through in one of my courses of action is like, if we do mandatory training, like first aid training or firearms training, we are so shorthanded, it destroys our schedule. Like it is an absolute clusterfuck. Getting people's for calls for service. Our priorities is still responding to emergencies. So if I was in a perfect world, right, is I'd get enough troopers practicing jiu-jitsu. You explain, you show your gym, because you want leadership to come and see what this place is. This is what we're going to invest into in our troopers. Like, this is the quality people, right? For an example, John, he took a tough loss with the bare knuckle boxing, which everyone thought he should have won. You know what? He handled himself like a complete gentleman. He didn't blame anyone else, and you did too. You think that's the kind of gym that you want your troopers going to, because that's the culture, right?
And he has a cast on his hand right now, and he's already back to training. He's like, listen, it's what I do.
He's an animal, right? So like, that's the place that's the character building that you want. It's the continuing of the education. And so if command has to come in here and look around and see what's going on and speak to you personally, and it's like, our troopers are already doing this. So the whole objective would be this gym and other gyms like this, right? With quality human beings. I know there's some out on the east side. There's some to have quality places like this, just to have an account. So all I have to do is say, hey, it's me, Roger. It's like, oh, Roger's out of the Metro North Post. They build a Metro North Post. There's money for it. Yeah, because it would literally be training that is going to drastically improve the ability for your officers to do their job. Yeah. We understand that. Yeah. And it's like, imagine, let's talk about some imagination. Yeah. Imagine a world where the police officers could go into any reputable place that's like maybe pre-assigned by the Michigan State Police, where when certified. You know all you have to do is go check in. There's like some system that verifies that you're a trooper, and then you're able to train. That would be unbelievable. That's what
because now you're not putting financial stress on the officer. You are encouraging them to do something that is not only good for their physical health, their mental health, their skill development. The effects are massive. Yeah. The amount of things that it'll help you with. Like you said, the guy using a Kimura to not get this massive guy on top of you harming you right after you had just learned it.
Like I did that move like 6 times.
I must have taught it pretty well there.
Yeah, I'm a pretty good teacher, I guess. But
no, think about that world where the Brighton police could show up.
Yep.
And then they know they're all set. You know what I mean? And it's massive.
What's your name? Okay, very good. And you know other cops are there. And then you know that, oh, Roger goes to this gym. Oh, maybe I'll catch Roger there. Hey, Roger, you're going to be at this gym. It needs to be that easy. You know what, James? What drives me nuts is we have this for dry cleaning.
Oh,
we have it for dry.
So it's like the avenue is there.
Yeah.
We've already implemented things like this. And why in the world would we have it for dry cleaning, but not something that can literally save their life? And like I said, I keep reiterating this. And the suspects, the better you are to handle a physical confrontation, the less damage you're going to do. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds weird, but like the more dangerous you are, the less damage you're going to do.
How many videos do you see of like Matt Serra mounted somebody and just like, hey, laugh
at a restaurant in Vegas? The guy's like super angry, wants to hurt him, and he's like, no, calm down, you'll be fine.
Come on,
get some security in here.
Ryan Hall just on top of somebody at a pizza parlor. Hey, it's fine. Like
100%. Man.
That's what I want, because like I'm never satisfied with something being the same as when I got and when I'm about to leave. This is my big vision, and I wrote my goal down is 5 years, but I think we can do it sooner than that, because this is catching fire more. Ever since I've been promoted, and now it's more pressure. I can't let off the throttle, because like I tell my dudes, I get up at 3:30 in the morning, I work out, I go to work. After I go to work, I take care of my family, and I do it all over again. On my days off, I go to CrossFit, and then I come to jiu-jitsu.
I actually just had an idea too that like the Marines have a great reputation. Like a lot of people, especially the ones that support the military, that are standard citizens of society, they look at Marines as extremely powerful figures. Yeah. When someone was in the Marines, they're like, that's the baddest man on earth. Yeah. Like if you mess with them, you have no chance. Like that's how they view the Marines. You know what I mean? And then, we have a lot of Marines that train here. We go like, wow, the actual hand-to-hand combat they training, like they need to pursue more when they get out. But what it is there's a standard, right? Like there's a certain level. Imagine if the citizens of a nation knew that their police force was extremely well trained.
Yes.
These people are purple belts or higher of jiu-jitsu. And like, listen, instantly just off that. Most fights in my life I've completely avoided just because people either knew about my
Yes.
jiu-jitsu. They were like, you know what? Let's just de-escalate things. He's a professional fighter. He's won several national tournaments of jiu-jitsu. Let's just calm down. If citizens knew
Yes.
that the police force, they don't want to shoot you, they don't want to hurt you, they don't want to do any of these things, to you, but they're extremely well trained. And if you grab a hold of one of them, you're going for a ride,
Yep.
and you're going to probably end up on the losing end of the situation. It's going to listen, bullies, angry people, criminals, they don't want to take
No.
somebody on that has a great chance of whooping their ass. They don't want that. That's like from elementary school.
Yeah.
The bully searches for the easy victim that goes like, okay, this person won't give me the resistance back. They don't go like, that guy's a national Golden Glove boxing champion, I'm going to go give him shit. That fucking never happens.
It's not how this world works.
So imagine if we knew that police were not just trained how to use their firearms, but they were bad motherfuckers.
Yes.
It's like, listen, you tangle up with that police officer, it's going to end up bad for you. You're way more likely to listen. You're way more likely to go along with commands. The whole situation is going to be less escalated.
And what's crazy is the state police is like very big on uniform. It's like our uniform, our presence does change. And it's true. I remember working in the city and, like gang members are like, oh, damn, that's the state police. And it's like, hey.
I get it. It's presence.
Yes.
But that is also an illusion. That's something you're
Yes.
projecting.
Yep.
What we need is the real backing to that. And then you know what? How great, if you're a state police officer, state police trooper, how awesome would you feel knowing that, listen, you're not putting out an image.
You are
that person.
Yes.
That is who you are. If that person crosses a line, you are highly trained and skilled at violence to de-escalate things.
100%. And here's the thing, too, is that I tell my trooper this all the time. And it's funny you bring up the samurai stuff because, like, my troopers are like, they're getting to know me. And I do this. And they're like, well, how do you have time? You have 2 kids. You have a 3rd one on the way. And I'm like, I make time. Because when I decided to be in this job, I lost the right to be lazy. I lost the right to be complacent. We are samurais. And they kind of laugh. I'm like, no. Think about what you do. You suit up, you go out there, and you deal with the bad.
What does samurai mean? Do you know?
Peaceful warrior?
It's to serve.
To serve, yes. I just saw a documentary on Netflix. I'm so mad that I missed it.
What do police do? Protect and serve. You are.
Yep.
I would be preaching that to everyone. You are a modern day samurai.
Yes.
Imagine a samurai that didn't train physically and with his weapon. That's not a samurai.
100%. So that's what I tell them, and they kind of laugh, and I'm like, you suit up, you go out, you work, okay? If you're not sharp, and people have this misconception, it's like, hey, if I get into a use of force situation, some guy wants to fight me, I just get pissed, I'll kick his ass. People often think that, they're going to rise to the occasion. My friend, you're only going to rise to
your training.
Yes, and if you haven't trained since recruit school, or if you haven't worked out since recruit school,
and actually, you're just going to gas yourself out in about 30 seconds. Get as pissed as you want. Fire your adrenaline. 30 seconds later, you're going to be gasping for air, completely helpless. So great decision on doing that.
100%. And so that's what I tell my dudes. I was like, you've lost the right to do that. And it's like, they're like, whatever you decide, like cops should get paid more. You should have, it's like, if you were worried about money and all that stuff, you should have did a different job. It's like, I don't get paid enough to do. Yes, you do. Because this is a life. You didn't pick a career. You picked a lifestyle.
And let's be honest, maybe society would reward, like let's say the state police turned into the gold standard and citizens were thankful. They were like, listen, these are highly trained, skilled individuals capable of extreme violence that show restraint because of their training that are out making our communities better. I bet you the support for the police would skyrocket. But when you have undertrained police and you have emotional people flying off the handle and you have videos all over YouTube now of a police officer beating the shit out of someone because he lost his cool. Like you said, he exploded. Now all of a sudden it's going to be, you have people, I was so disgusted when I started hearing about defund the police and all cops are bastards. Like I grew up in a world where, well, first of all, like when I was a child, like I've watched reporters now interrupt a sitting president.
Oh my God, yeah.
I remember watching a White House briefing during the coronavirus crisis and watching reporters interrupt the president of the United States of America and being like, my illusions of the world that I carried over from childhood are shattered.
Yeah.
Can you fucking imagine going back to me or you being 10 years old and saying one day there'd be somebody that thinks they're so high and mighty, they interrupt the president? I don't care if you thought that was the worst human being on earth. You don't disrespect the president of the United States. We live in a culture now where that is not the case.
And some people cheer that they interrupted the president of the United States, but
something's wrong with you.
Listen,
something's wrong with you.
Hey.
If you're against extreme winners, or if you're against leaders, or you're against people that are majorly successful, something is wrong with you.
Yep.
You need to look in the mirror and you need to find out how to bring yourself to a high enough standard that you want to see other people win and you want to see the truth prevail and you want to see good people victorious over bad people. And I tell you what, like if you're loving that stuff, oh yeah, you should do that. You're a loser.
Yeah, you should definitely go to China and try that and see how that works out for you.
I've been to China.
Me
Listen,
too.
If you think this country is horrible and you think, oh, America's this terrible, I love my country.
Oh my
and I've
God.
traveled all over the world. And there's
Yes.
a lot of beautiful places. And I've met wonderful people in many other countries. I love this country. And there's a reason that people from around the world flock to this country for the hope and the dream of what this country could be. That only works if we come together. I've been to China and I've seen people in rural towns. We stopped at one town. It is so disgusting and disheartening the way that these people live. Their bathroom was a hole cut in the ground that you could go to the bathroom. These people, if you spoke up against, you know what, we don't really like the corruption in our government and the way that they're deprived, you'll go missing and your whole family go missing. It won't be a conspiracy. It'll be widely known that like, oh, you challenge the authority figures, you're gone forever. You still have some fragments of freedom in this country, even though a lot of them are under attack. A lot of the things that we stand for are under attack in this country. You still are privileged to a much better life than most of the rest of the world, especially the third world, like a lot of these countries. The conditions are unimaginable until you've seen them, and I've been there.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's like we need to, God, I don't want to ramble on forever with this, but we need to get back to like being honest, being truthful, letting go of hate, letting go of anger, not being controlled by our emotions, not being outraged, not cheering when someone fails.
Yeah.
That is a disgusting trait.
I hate that.
You know what I mean? Because like if you're someone that's really hoping that somebody fails, I just hope you know that you're below that person.
You are 100%.
You're below that person.
There's no doubt.
Because every successful person I meet in my life, every good person that has their shit together, these people want to see others win.
Follow me.
It is always the fucking losers that want to see someone fail, that take solace in the fact that, like, look, my broken life is okay because they lost too.
Well, at least he lost.
And I'm not saying that you have to be a loser forever. And I'm not saying that you grew up as a loser. I'm saying that is the characteristic of a fucking loser.
100%.
And you need to look in the mirror and you need to say, hey, if I'm so angry at the world and I'm maybe either taught to hate all these people or I carry all this hatred, you need to start saying, what can I do to better the world around me and to raise myself and my community in a better direction? And not a lot of people are doing that, man.
I think, James, I think you how are we going to change the world, right? How are we going to change the world positively? Look at what you had to change within yourself to be where you're at, right? And now look at the army of people around you. Look at the people you surrounded yourself with. You're raising future leaders, right? And me in a supervisor role, I'm trying to raise future leaders. When I was doing the same thing. But here's the other thing too, is like police officers, or if you just have an interaction with somebody else anywhere, at the mall, at the coffee shop, you become that positive person.
It's a ripple.
It's a ripple. And you have those positive interactions. Be the leader. Be the leader to make the change.
The quote that's on the top of my Facebook says, the greatest gift you have to give is that of your own personal transformation.
Yeah.
And those words, when that hit me, when I read those words, I mean, I've read several quotes that are like that, but just the idea that like so much of life is beyond your control until you work on yourself. And then what you don't realize is like, you might think, you know, some people would look at the situation and go, well, the way that the Michigan State Police train people is way beyond my control. It's way beyond my pay grade. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm just I'm part of the system.
Yeah.
Until you change yourself and you do so much inner work, and then all of a sudden you go, you know what? The actions that I take and the influence that I have over people, especially if my cause is benevolent, is going to change the world. I am going to be the beacon that brings other people to a better reality, or back to reality, and we are going to inspire change.
Oh, yeah.
And when you do that, the personal power that you unlock, the reason that this gym exists is because of the changes I made within my own mind. It's not because of things I was given. It was not because of this. It's because I did the inner work to say, maybe I am capable of changing my future, and not just my future, but countless of lives that I encounter.
Yes.
Because I'm taking the responsibility to level up.
And guess what? it's contagious. It really is, because more people want to be around you. Like, more people want to start asking you questions. So like when I got to the post and people got to know me, all of a sudden they're like, why do you do that? And I'm like, and I explained to them. They're like, that's pretty cool. And then more people, why do you do that? Why do you do that? And then I've done that with successful people, right? I've looked at great leaders. Sir, why do you do it that way? And I have to like control myself around it, because I get to be a fanboy, and I'm like, I don't get why you did that. Can you explain that to me? Because that was brilliant. It's contagious. And then positivity is contagious. Everything about moving forward, because there's no more jealousy anymore. Now they caught the bug and they're doing it. And
I saw something, not to get off topic with coronavirus, where I think it was people that were anti-mask. I saw literally a massive group of people being like, well, I hope that when they go to the hospital, they're refused treatment because they wouldn't do it. And I'm like, man, what a sickness, or what a disgusting, like, how do you look in the mirror at yourself being like, yeah, I'm really a good person, whether or not you or don't support masks, whether you do or do not fully buy into the pandemic. If you're the type of person that looks at someone different than you and goes, I hope they have suffering,
you're a piece of shit.
That's a sickness. You're a piece of shit, man. And I look at it that way, and I go, because like, let's not even talk about which side of we are, but like, let's say, I'm not even going to use the V word right now because it'll probably get censored. Whether you are for or against this particular V, okay, I don't hate you.
No.
But yet there are people that are like, if you don't do this, I hope your children get sick and die. You're like, listen, you're a piece of shit. So now all of a sudden, let's say you had an opinion that maybe was correct, or maybe you had information that could have been effective. I don't care.
Yeah.
Because I would never follow someone like you. No. So it's like we really have to get back to that. Like, if you're not working on yourself and not finding out how to be a good human being, you're not going to have any influence. So then when you're screaming at the internet over your keyboard about how you hate all these people and you just hate these things and you hate that and that, really, it's because you have not looked in the mirror. And if you looked deep enough and you went, wow, did I just wish I saw a famous person hold up a picture of Donald Trump's severed head. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
People celebrated it.
Unreal.
I don't care if I thought Biden was the worst president in history or the best. I would never support any human being on this planet holding up a picture of his head. You're disgusting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, that's a sickness, and you somehow have to justify that, because I believe that all people that do evil things, there's either a tipping point. Like, I don't think you just get to that type of extreme that like I support that. You justify something a little bit, and then you justify it a little bit more. The next thing you know, you're supporting something that's a little bit outlandish, and the next thing you know, you're celebrating something like that. It's disgusting.
And the masses are asses, right? Because they just want to be a part of a group. They want to be a part of a tribe, and they want to be able to scream and yell.
And it's disgusting, and it's ruining our society.
It is.
Because, like, I mean, across any movement, look at, like, when Me Too was huge, which it was against sexual assault or the way that men were to women. This is a benevolent movement. Me Too is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But then Me Too should be, even if they're on your team. If the current, I'm not going to say, again, this is going to get censored, but if the current person sitting at the top was involved in a Me Too allegation, you should pursue that just as hard as if someone that was an enemy of yours was a part of that. When Kavanaugh got absolutely railroaded over allegations from like his teenage years that had no corroboration, that fell to pieces, right?
Yeah.
But yet there's open ones right in front of your eyes, but you're like, oh, push that under the rug because they're on our side. Listen, if someone, let's say someone is a rapist, it should not matter if that is your father, your enemy, your best friend, Republican, Democrat, rich, poor. You should be like, you're a piece of shit and I'm against you. But we are getting away from that. We are literally getting to the point where people buy so much into their team that it's like, yo, don't look at anything that we do. Just look at what the enemy does. That is not conducive of a healthy population and a healthy culture. And I believe that's going to lead to such a rift that you're going to have an extreme collapse effect because you're detaching from truth. You're detaching from reason. You're detaching from reality. You know what I mean? If you went up to a 5-year-old and said this one bad kid goes around stabbing people, they'd be like, that person's terrible. Yeah, but he plays on the same football team as you. Is he still bad? If that kid went, the little kid would go, he's still terrible.
Yeah.
You shouldn't stab people. There's adults going like, well, they voted Republicans, so just, Roger, we need to come back to reality. Jiu-jitsu is a dose of reality. Podcasts, these conversations are a dose of reality. We need more reality.
Every conversation that we have. So speaking of just micro interactions that I think change somebody's life. So this was a couple years ago. I pulled somebody over. It was during the Trump election. And this dude happened to be black. I'm like, hey, what's up, man? I am so, like, I try to be a stand-up comedian because it's a lot of pressure for people, right? And, like, I don't take myself seriously. To be honest, I just got strangled by a 14-year-old at the gym. I'm not taking myself seriously, and I was wearing a rash guard. I was like, I knew I shouldn't have worn this today. Damn it. So anyways, so I'm talking to the guy, and he's like, well, you just pulled me over because I'm black. I'm like, no, I didn't. He's like, you probably voted for Trump, and you're prejudiced. You're prejudiced against black people. And I look at him, and I was like, listen, friend. And I call everyone friend. I was like, I do have prejudices. There's no doubt. He's like, yeah, against who? And I'm like, pedophiles. And he's like, oh, damn, I agree with that one. I was like, yeah, we're fine. And then all of a sudden we had this open dialogue just on the side of the road. We laughed. We had a great time. And so I was like, hey, I'm not going to give you a ticket. I wasted enough of your time. And he's like, I'm like, what's the matter? He's like, that's the weirdest interaction I've ever had with anybody. And I'm a person too. It's nice meeting you.
Bro,
I'll see you later.
He probably came in filled with the media told him they hate you. Police officers hate black people. Mm-hmm. They're all racist.
Yeah.
All cops are bastards. When you interact with this guy, it's going to be, your life is on the line. They're going to pull you out of the car and execute you.
Yeah.
In his brain, he's like, oh my God. And all of a sudden, he drove away going, that guy seemed like a good dude. It's like challenging all of his thoughts. His brain's like, I'm not insulting this man in any way, but I look at a lot of people like the mouse on the wheel stopped running. Okay. Yeah. But now all of a sudden it starts going. It's like, was that a good guy? But wasn't he an officer? But didn't the news tell me I had to hate those people? Oh my!
It's like he was making me laugh. You know what I mean? And that's so we can make changes as individuals, right? And like the people that you're coaching here and you're teaching here, right? They're from completely different backgrounds, but I can come in here and hug them, and I don't talk to them that much, but it's like we've been friends for years, right? And those people are having the same sentiment and they're passing it because you know what? It's contagious. And at least at the end of the day, you have a brick and mortar building where you can bring everyone together. And as troopers, at least we have the ability to, we can make a decision, make a positive change or negative change in somebody's life. With every interaction, every phone call, every crash, every citation, you have the ability to affect that person one way or the other. And
the more that these things take place, the more that people will actually challenge bad information. Like, all cops are bastards is bad information. Mm-hmm. But if you live in illusions and you have no dose of reality in your life and you're being told by all these people to be angry and hate them and the news is reinforcing that and your favorite politician is backing that, you might actually start to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you actually sit down and you have reality and you create friendships and you're a sense of community, you'll naturally start challenging that. And then the next time that bullshit information comes up to you, you're going to go,
no,
this other information they told me was actually bullshit.
Disregard.
So you know what? I'm going to throw this off the table. This is probably bullshit. It creates a healthier thinking population.
Well, that's why you and I don't have cable probably, right? Number one, it's expensive, whatever. But number two is just like everything that you see is bullshit because we interact with everybody, and I see the good in everybody, and I have fun with everybody. And it's like, this isn't real. You know what I mean? Even during like the protests and stuff, there was families from the inner city. I remember I had to hold a traffic point, right? So I can let the protesters do their thing. An older black lady came out and says, hey baby, do you need any water? And I'm like, no. She's like, well, I ain't gonna let you tell me no. And she came up and she's like, I support the police. So if you're gonna, there's good people out there, and it's a lot more than we think. But you know what? I shut the news off. I live in reality. I know that there's wonderful people. I know there's people I disagree with,
and you have to look at why does the media want you to tune in? Do they love you?
No.
Do they know you? Do they know Roger and James? And they're like, you know what? We just want to help you live a better life. Or do they have a motive or a reason for you to tune in every night? That could be purely just money. That could just be a monetary thing. Or they could want to control and formulate your opinions for you. Yeah. They don't want you to get with your community and realize that racism is fucking bullshit. They don't want you to get with the community and train alongside police officers and be like, man, these guys are great.
Yeah.
They don't want these things. It is so much better and probably drives way more action and things in general to split people up and give them this distorted view of the world where you go, you work, you lock yourself in your house, you separate from your society, you get fed all this bullshit, you spend your money on their companies and their main supporters and donors, and then that's existence to you. You need to quit the shit. If you want to find out about how the world actually is, go out into the world and experience it. And go out into the world with kindness and with strong characteristics that can influence people in a positive direction. And you'll see the world is not what the news tells you, okay? And the more you do that, the healthier you're going to become, and you're going to influence other people. So the countless millions of people struggling with anxiety and depression and hatred and because I consider hate a disease.
Yes.
Like, it infects you, and it affects all of your relationships, and it affects the quality of your life. Like, I can see people going down a road following hate, and I literally know, like, these people are destined. They're going to crash into divorce. They're going to crash into depression. They're going to crash into suicide. And the amount of times I've witnessed it and I've watched someone slipping into chaos, and they think they're, like, fighting a noble fight. They're like, all cops are bastards. We need to. And then when their lives completely fucking implode, the news doesn't care about you then.
No.
You know what? So you need to get rid of this shit, and you need to get back out in the world and start with yourself.
Yes.
Start with yourself. One of the best revelations I had in my entire life that I believe unlocked my potential to be the man that I am today is when I started realizing, it was actually when I was studying Buddhism nonstop. Because, like, as a young man, I was trying to learn about the world. I was like, hey, I only ever really learned about Christianity. Let me look into Catholicism.
Absolutely.
Let me look into Buddhism. Let me look into Hinduism. What do these people believe?
Why?
Why do they believe?
it?
Why are they willing to die for their beliefs? Like, so I started studying, and then I came across this ideology that really hit me hard, where it was like, in Buddhism, when you look at, you're in control of almost nothing. Like, in our culture, we want to control things. Like, your wife, like, you put a ring on her hand, and you're like, that's mine now. Like, that's my. Like, you don't control that woman. You have to be the type of man that is worthy of that woman.
Yes.
That, like, she doesn't stay with you because you said you're not allowed to leave me. She stays with you because of the person that you are. You don't control your girlfriend or your boyfriend. You don't control. So your best friend could be on a road to alcoholism and disaster, but you don't control them. You can only control yourself in this world. And if you focus on that, you let go of all the control. Like, it sounds terrifying, but, like, you know what? You're going to die. Every single one of us is going to die. You are on this road for a limited time, right? And the more that you try to desperately control the things in your life, the less in control you're going to be.
So true.
Because the universe is going to remind you, you don't have control over shit besides yourself. You could be the best employee in the world, and your boss could still fire you.
Yes.
You could be the best husband on this earth, and you could be just the pinnacle of what most people would want, and your wife could still cheat on you. You could, and at first, these realities seem terrifying, but once you get to the peace within yourself of, like, man, it's really just me. So if I can just give my fucking best in this life, and I can really level up and challenge myself and grow, the universe is going to give me the best experience based upon that human being. You know what I mean? And I think
that's so true. I mean, the word luck, right? Like, I use it all the time, but luck is opportunity met with preparation. That's all it is, right? It's what did you do to put yourself in that situation to be lucky? You know what I mean? And you're so right.
I've tried to have that conversation with a lot of people, and the way our society is set up, it doesn't go well. It's so scary.
Yeah.
They're so fearful of not having control. But what I have to teach them is, like, that control that you have is an illusion. It doesn't exist.
Nope.
It's like the blanket protects you from the boogeyman.
Yeah.
You have to realize that is not the truth. And the more that you let go of, once you're free, because what you're actually doing is you're letting go of fear.
Yeah.
Fear tells you, you better control this, or you're going to have this happen. You better control this. You better control this. And when you realize that, like, hey, fear, let me tell you something real quick. I'm not in control of any of those things. I am in control of me.
Yep.
And if I put the best out of me, I'm going to get the best in return. And you know what? It gives you a peace of mind that, no, like, I love the woman that I'm with right now. She won't listen to this podcast because she doesn't listen to any of my podcasts. But I'm going to marry this woman. I'm going to ask her to marry me probably before the end of this year. We've been together 5 years. Like nobody, anyone that listens to this podcast, you shut your mouth. But I'm going to ask this woman to marry me.
Beautiful.
And as a young man, I never even thought I was going to get married.
Yeah, me too.
But, with this idea, oh God, where was I going with this? God.
Control.
Yes. Okay. You're not in control of anything, man. And I've tried to have that conversation with her, and so many people are so fearful that, like, what if I just relinquish the idea that I'm in control and then my life is going to fall apart? No. Fear is going to lose its grasp on you. And when fear is screaming in your ear, that demon that I have tattooed across my stomach that my grandmother went, why would you do that? When that demon loses the ability to control you with fear, you unlock your potential to be the best that you can be. Because all of a sudden it's like, hey, life is going to happen as it happens, but James Gray is going to do everything he can to bring things in the right direction. You know what I mean? And like, so I think that's why I'm successful. I think that's why I'm able to be the business owner that dreams like, I'm going to own this whole complex. I'm going to do that. I'm going to produce world champions. I'm going to change. I believe that I'm going to be such a beacon of my community that one day people will be like, we are so proud and thankful that the Michigan Institute of Athletics is part of our community. But it's because, like, man, when you release all fear, you are free to pursue what you love.
100%. You found, so like it's like the dating situation, right? So like I found out at a very early age, my wife's like, hey, I'm going to go out with my friends. I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, it doesn't bother you? And I'm like, you're an adult, man. I don't care. And so I never thought that was a big deal because my parents were the same way. And then I come to realize my wife's friends are like, such and such he's so controlling. I hate it. And then it pushes them further and further away.
And it's fear.
It's fear.
Because the fear tells them, if you don't control this, you might lose that person.
Yes.
But really, by being a controlling person, you're probably more likely to lose them versus just a loving, supportive human being. So your fear is a liar.
Yeah. So like so I spent a lot of time away from my wife, and they're like, or she was my girlfriend or whatever at the time, and they're like, are you worried about her cheating on you? I'm like, no. I'm like, she cheats on me, and then we won't be together. I'm like, who cares? I was like, the only thing I can be is the best human being. And if she doesn't like that, then she can find somebody else because I don't want to force anyone to stay with me. You know what I mean?
That's exactly where I was going with the part before I started getting a little emotional about I'm going to marry this woman is the idea that, like, listen, I love her to death. I'm going to marry her. She is an amazing human being, but I could lose her tomorrow and I will be okay because I will know that, man, I gave my best. I loved her. I cared about her, and life will be okay.
Yeah.
You have to let go of fear. You have to tell fear, shut up. You're right. That could happen. I could get cancer tomorrow. I could get in a car accident tomorrow. If I live in fear, some people, I won't name one of the kids in this building, never drove on the highway because of the fear of what might happen. He would always take side roads everywhere he went because the fear of what could happen because he was told this, going faster. Someone influenced him. You have to let go of fear to get the best existence out of this life. And I think things like the media and like all the stuff we've talked about that control people so badly, I think it's because so many people live in fear. I think for people like us that we've detached from so much of our fear, when they get on the news and they say, you're going to die, because they're not saying you're going to die, but they're subtly trying to be like, you better be fearful.
Here's coming.
Bad shit is coming your way. Did you know that this person is trying to do this and they're going to fear. Most people, that taps right into that little demon that's camping out in their mind. And that dude's like, yo, put shit on red alert.
Let's go. Stock up.
Where
ammo.
You and I are like, okay, sure it is, bro.
Oh, yeah. I'm like, I was like, honey, are we going to get the kids a new Buzz Lightyear? Because okay. You know what I mean? It's no factor. Like, it's because it's like, I know what reality is. And to be honest, I didn't know this, but you went through your fair share of heartbreak and unavoidable and tragedies that you can control. You've existed and lived through. It's okay. You're still a great person.
Life still goes on.
It does.
Life still goes on. So as weird as it is, it's almost great to have all of your illusions shattered. Now, like, those are powerful words, but I'm telling you right now.
No, that's deep.
If you live in illusions, you live thinking that all cops are bastards. You think this, you think that. You hate all blue people, and then you go in, you have these wonderful interactions with a blue person, and you go, wow. And that illusion gets shattered. It is, the ego struggles with it because, like, you create a world, and you want the world to be the way that you want it to be versus the way that it actually is.
Yep.
So when you have those illusions shattered, the first time my illusions got shattered extremely bad is probably the most powerful moment of my entire life. My mother, my whole life growing up, I was told that she got sick and passed away.
Okay.
So, and I was very young. I was a little kid, but I was told that your mom got sick and she died. And like, so my worldview created around that, right? Like my mother got sick and she passed away. Like, okay, that's like my little brain figured out like people get sick and that's an unfortunate thing. And I was probably 12 years old and I got into an argument with one of my cousins. And my cousin looked me dead in the eyes. I remember the exact living room that I was in, stronger than 9/11.
Yeah.
My cousin looked me in the eyes after a Nintendo game. We had just played Nintendo and she was mad at me. And she goes, well, you don't even know that your mother killed herself.
Oh, fuck. Such a 12-year-old move, though, but fuck.
Dude, my entire worldview was shattered because the instant reaction, this is why I can see it so well in other people, was like, you're a fucking liar. Why would you ever say that? You're a bad person. And like, really, she was actually just telling me the truth. She was shattered. The truth, you know how when people say the truth hurts? That moment, I can tell you more than anything else, the truth of that statement hit me like I can't quite describe the feeling in my heart that I had. And then the anger. And then, because my illusion got shattered. And I went to my father and I was like, do you know what Megan told me? Megan told me that my mom didn't die from being sick. My mom killed herself. Oh, my God. And the look that I saw in my father's eyes, I still remember where I was. I remember exactly where he was sitting on the couch in my house in Vermilion Hills. I remember the window shade color. I remember it that vividly.
Yeah.
When he looked me in the eyes and said, yeah, your mom committed suicide. God. So it was like I had such a strong... You know what it is? You create a story.
Yeah.
And you hold on to that story for dear fucking life. And you don't want anything to ruin that story. That is your story. Maybe, no matter what, this girlfriend is mine forever. Like that might be your story. Or, whatever your story is, you cling to that story.
But realistically, right? And as callous as it sounds, when you found that out, I mean, you're just a little boy and your illusions were shattered. And this could be applicable to everybody else. So you found that out. Did that change anything? It doesn't bring your mom back. No. It doesn't make your dad a worse person.
It gives you a healthier relationship with the truth, and it shows you that you can endure things that you thought weren't possible. You know what I mean? And like I said, the biggest thing is it gives you a healthier relationship with the truth, man. So like the same conversation about officers that are putting out an image and they're not really that, you have an unhealthy relationship with the truth. Mm-hmm. You need to work to have a better relationship with reality and the truth. And that shattering of illusion, like when you come in, like you said, and a 15-year-old kid, you're a big, strong police officer and you think that like, I'm in charge, this person can't do anything, and they strangle you and you're forced to give up. That illusion gets shattered. Yep. And then you're going to do one of two things. You're either going to never come back in and just cling to your illusion and say, well, this was a freak incident. Or they'll just have amnesia. They'll just delete that experience.
Yep.
Or you're going to develop a healthier relationship with the truth. And what that is going to do is empower you.
Yes.
Extremely. You're going to be a much stronger version of the person that you were than before. You know what I mean? So like, as weird as it sounds, one of the things I think that has created more leaders and more successful people than anything else is trauma and illusions being shattered.
It's so true. It's so true. Like I have kids, and I never want my kids to go through anything bad. Like I'm like, no, but I'm like, damn it. Like I mean,
they almost have to.
Yeah, but like of course, I don't want them to go through any abuse or what. But like
100%.
It has to be artificial, right?
A coach looking at them and saying, "Yo, your work ethic kind of sucks right now. You're off the team."
Yes,
those are great things if their work ethic sucks because that is a healthy dose of the truth, right? Yeah. So there's a huge difference. Like you're not saying, "I want my children to have this horrible incident happen." Yeah. No, but you want them to have the truth.
It's a struggle, right? So it's hilarious.
Long story around, put your kids in wrestling.
Jiu-jitsu, wrestling. Yeah.
So all we were trying to do on this 3-hour podcast was say, put your kids in the struggle.
This is 3 hours?
Roger.
Oh my goodness.
You and we just hit the 3-hour mark. I guarantee you my phone, I leave it on silent all the time. I always check it when I'm able to. Yeah. Otherwise it's 24/7. I guarantee you my girlfriend is probably like, what are you doing? Did you get lost?
Yeah, thank God this is recorded so there's evidence that we've been here together.
This is the longest podcast I've ever done. But honestly, if it's good with you, dude, I want to do a part 2.
Yeah,
I think maybe we even wrap this up here.
Yeah.
But man, like this has been some of the most effortless dialogue, and I believe there's been extremely powerful and influential dialogue in this, and we need more of this. We need people. Listen, even if you hate someone, hate someone, I want you to think about the prospect of sitting down with that person and trying to talk through finding truth, finding humanity, finding that you're actually not that different from one another. You know what I mean? Because like the news has a lot of you people confused. The news has a lot of you people fueled by anger and hatred and animosity. And then you're seeking it out. That's another thing that disgusts me, man, is like, first of all, problems are going to come to you. Struggle is going to come to you. But some people actively seek out to reinforce their hatred. Why do I have all this hatred inside? Need to find something to be angry about. I witnessed it with my dad with road rage. My dad was just, I think he had a lot of things in his life that he hadn't worked through. So anything that would happen on the road, anything, man. I tell you what, someone could pull out. To somebody like me, it'd be pull out. I would just slow my car down a tiny bit. Wouldn't bother me at all. I don't even give it a second of thought.
You're like, ooh.
My dad would speed up, be pissed off, hit his horn, be angry. And I literally, as a little monkey, was like, my dad's addicted to this. My dad looks for things to have that feeling of outrage.
Yeah.
And I couldn't quite explain it in my young brain. I'm like, why would you want to be angry? Why would you, what if that person's running late? What if they're having a horrible day? What if they didn't realize how far away you were? You're instantly just be like, what an asshole.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, you can't let anger grow inside.
No.
You can't let hatred grow inside, or it will. And it will constantly look at the world around you to figure out like, why am I pissed off? Why am I angry? Oh, there's the reason I'm angry. There's the reason. No, you're angry because you're angry.
Yeah, 100%, because you haven't done anything to deal with it, right? And it's it feels good, right? Honking your horn, you fucking dickhead. Wow, that feels good. But would that really solve?
It is not taking you in a good direction, though.
No.
It is taking you to disaster. And I see it. And when I see that over and over, especially if it's someone I love, I try to influence them positively. I try to plant seeds that can grow into a better way of thinking and being. But I actually slowly start to distance myself from that because I go like, that energy, just like positive energy is infectious, that energy is infectious. Those type of people tend to come together and they get into tight-knit groups and then they're all angry and they're hateful. And it's like, listen, you guys aren't going to do shit.
Nope.
You're going to look back at your lives at 70 and 80 and go like, man, what if I loved people better? What if I would have just focused on the positive energy? What if I would have focused on the change that I could make versus complaining about the things that I hate? You know what I mean? And like, it's just not an existence I'm going to live, man. I refuse.
I get this weird stereotype because I was in Afghanistan, right? And my deployment, I was very, very fortunate. And it could have been way worse. But there's still heroes serving over there, especially right now in Kabul. But people, so like one of my roommates at the academy, he's Lebanese, he's Muslim. And very great. I mean, we're both sergeants now, and we had a conversation, and he's like, do you ever hate Muslim people or Arabic people? No. You know what I hate? Dickheads. I was like, when I was in another country, when I was in Afghanistan, I would eat food with these people. They would they're so poor, but they're so willing to feed me. That's beautiful. And I'm like, because there's a terrorist extremist, I don't identify everybody as them. Just like I don't identify every white person in the KKK. Just like I was like, I hate and love people equally. You know what I mean? I hate all the negativity, and I love. You
have a healthier relationship with the truth.
Yeah.
The news hasn't worked on you.
No,
conditioning hasn't worked on you. You went, no, not all Muslim people are bad. That's the dumbest fucking statement I've ever heard.
Literally fucking dumb.
But then again, we have woke people that would say like, how dare you ever stereotype against a Muslim person or as an Islamic follower?
Yeah.
But they'll say all cops are bastards. You're doing the same thing. We need to have healthy relationships with the truth.
And if you're woke, what if that police officer is a Muslim gay person and now he's a bastard? And you know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. And
because it is further from the truth. You need to just let go of emotions. If you feel emotional about something, stop, chill, relax. When you don't have emotions, you need to objectively work through the truth.
So I have this thing about emotions, especially at work, right? Because like you're human beings, so you have moments where like you get to work and somebody might get under your skin, right? But I have a rule: I do not bring that home to hang out with my kids. Meaning, if somebody pisses me off and somebody does get under my skin, I'm not going to be like. I'm not going to go home and just be like, and be short with my kids and just have that in the back of my, I was like, I'm not bringing that home with me. And
it was an isolated incident that I had an emotional response to, which could be justified. Maybe they were being an idiot. Maybe they were being an asshole. Maybe, okay. But I have to then make sure that I don't take asshole energy and apply it to my family.
So easy, because it is contagious. And then like, so it's like, oh, okay, I'll just go get strangled by a 19-year-old female as I wear my stupid rash guard, and now I'm over it. You know what I mean? And like that's why we have to have healthy avenues of approach. And I think we're making a difference. I think you are, certainly. I know my friend that owns his gym in Wixom, Tyler Hutchinson, he's making a difference because he's totally similar. You know what I mean? And I know the people that walk out of here and interact with people out there, I know they're having the same thing. So.
And you know what? Last thing to wrap this podcast up, and this is only part one, ladies and gentlemen.
I guess, yeah.
This is arguably my favorite podcast I have ever done, bar none, hands down. But with that being said, people that go out into the world take the responsibility to just try to move things in a better direction.
Yeah.
Like you were just saying out of this building. Like, don't fix your life just for your own self-interest. We can do this together. Mm-hmm. Get your shit together. Hold your friends accountable. Hold your family members accountable. Yeah. Start giving them a healthier relationship with the truth. You know what? Your best friend that's been an alcoholic for years and is slowly destroying their life, as bad as it might hurt them and you to have to sit down with that person and be like, man, you're an alcoholic and the road you're on is going to lead to disaster. If you do that, you are going to try to move things in a better direction. Otherwise, you're sitting idly back in the distance, allowing whatever happens. Take a stance, be strong, be brave, you know what I mean? And we can change this world, and nobody's perfect. No human being on earth is perfect.
That's why we need each other, really, because we're not perfect, dude. That's
even
why we
the
need
best leaders on earth have done things they're ashamed of, have done things they're not proud of. But every day you wake up, you have an opportunity to take all these life lessons, all this information in front of you, all of these blueprints for success, and you can combine them in a way that allows you to go out into this world and inspire change, and it comes from within. So
I think that's a good thing to end on. I cannot believe it. Are you kidding me?
Bro, it has been 3 hours and 10 minutes.
I don't think I've ever done anything that long.
Normally these podcasts take me about 3 to 4 hours to edit. This one is going to be like 6, but I am stoked for it. I'm going to call my girl. You know what? I'm not going to call her on the podcast, but I'm going to have to say, I swear we were just having that good a conversation. Roger, truly an honor to have you in the studio here with me today. We're going to schedule your part 2 extremely soon. And by the way, anyone that listened to this full podcast through, shout out, because I believe we've dropped gold and insight throughout this thing, but it's very rare now that people take a moment to sit down. And like you said, when's the last time you've done something for 3 hours?
God. I honestly, I've been coming to your gym on and off, but we just see each other in passing. It's like I've known you for my entire life. It's weird. You know what I mean? Just the weird correlations.
And then all the connections that we saw.
Yeah, that's really strange.
How many human beings would have that if they sat down and had dialogue and realized the similarities amongst us are way more important than the differences?
I guarantee it. There's no possible way, because we're born on different sides of the planet, and look at these similarities. And if people just could do this, phenomenal.
It would make the world a better place.
You must put something in the coffee.
I must have sprinkled something in the coffee. But guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the podcast. Thank you for the people that are trying to make the world a better place. And make sure you tune in for part 2. So Roger, thank you very much.
Thank you. Sir. What a privilege. I appreciate it, brother.